form for all city buildings? Is that under your jurisdiction?
Each building's different. I mean, some buildings don't have metal detectors, others do, so I wouldn't say.
No, but we're only talking about service dogs here.
I would have to go back and check.
So whether it's this building or the library or the museum, that could be all different?
I suspect so, but I'd have to go back and check on that.
So as just within your the work that you do in your job and your position is part of policy, do you not create policy for all city buildings?
No, we do. It's the buildings that are under our control. Not all city buildings we manage.
Oh, okay. I was not aware of that. Okay.
Is SF Superior Court, is that under you?
Nope.
It's not.
Let me just ask, the letter that Mr. Tedesca got from the Superior Court, does it have any meaning for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll probably reach out to the individual who drafted the letter.
Okay. All right, great. Did you have go ahead.
A question. So the sheriff's department or the sheriff currently makes the decision at the door of whether a animal is allowed to be unleashed, or is the blanket policy all animals have to be on leash?
The policy is that all animals need to be on leash unless it impedes.
But I think I'm just repeating what Chair
right,
said. Is there no appeal process within City Hall?
I think just per ADA, if it's not readily obvious that the service animal needs to be off leash to perform its task, they have the ability to ask.
Right. So if an Army veteran, like I think the example in the materials is like a PTSD situation where the person's suffering from PTSD and the dog has to come inspect the rotunda before the guy feels comfortable entering.
Right. My understanding is that the animal will go inspect the rotunda, come back, then is put on leash after the task.
But is that left up to the sheriff to decide whether that happens or not?
I believe that's the determination, but
and there's, without any documentation or anything, they're just supposed to make the call right there.
I think there was consultation with Mayor's Office of Disability, City Attorney, and the Sheriff's Office on protocol and policy.
But that doesn't exist.
So there's another scenario too. Person in a wheelchair. Lots of times having a leash is an impediment. Mm-hmm. So the dog walks beside the wheelchair, okay, untethered and under voice control, okay. Whether it's somebody who is walking or in a wheelchair that has their dog for whatever purpose that they serve to be off leash, what difference does it make? Why in this case with Mr. Tedesca would that be different?
I think in the case that you referred to with the wheelchair, it's a little bit more obvious that the service animal might be hindered by a harness or a leash. So there is a bit of a difference there.
Well, I mean, what if I have a mobility disability, if the leash would cause me some hindrance, it may not be that obvious. Right. So then how would I deal with that at the front door?
And per the city attorney's memo, it says the public entity has the ability to ask what the service that the animal is providing.
But that doesn't determine whether it needs to be leashed or not.
I believe that's public entity may ask what work or task the animal has been trained to.
That's in general.
But you can't ask if it needs to be on a leash.
Yeah, that's in general. That's in general for exclusion of access totally. That's different. That's in determining whether the dog, it's actually, there are no service animals anymore. It's all service dogs pretty much now. But that's in determining whether the service dog is actually a service dog or not. That's what that paragraph is for. You can't conflate the two. One is, this is after we've already determined that this is a service animal, okay? Now we're talking about access into a building with or without a leash of a service dog. not other dogs, service dogs. That's really the kind of the focus of this on here. Okay, I'll take a break. Go ahead, Member Canada.
So before you were going to put up the signage, you had the signage with you and the machine wasn't working?
No, that
Oh,
was
no, that was the complainant.
That was the complainant.
Okay, so is there signage, and so your policy, does that state that the service animal has to be on leash unless these conditions, or doesn't it not mention the unless part?
Can you put that on the overhead, actually?
I think if we ever had to work the or could he just?
I could pass. I have several copies.
I think,
Thought it was.
Because if it doesn't have to me, if it doesn't have the unless part, then the person making the decision looks at that and says, no, you can't do it.
You know, I'd just like to raise that there could be some due process issues with continuing on with this hearing while you're down a party.
Yeah, could be.
I think.
Well, when we get to rebuttals, that will be the due process part. But
through the chair,
we're at the part just having clarification and asking questions.
Yeah, but being present to observe
Agreed.
This could potentially impact a rebuttal.
Agreed.
Through the chair, but Mr. Tedeschi has been pulled out of meetings before for the same reason. So it's really difficult to have this hearing.
Yeah.
and I think he would probably want us to continue.
Well, I don't want to. We shouldn't suppose what he would or would not want to have at this point. I'm very disturbed that his service dog was.
And this is not the first time
taken. I'm beside myself on this at this point. I'm almost at a point of requesting that the sheriff go get the dog back because he's duly did what he was asked to do, not bring the dog in the building, and be here for a public meeting. I'm very disturbed by this.
So through the chair, Mr. Gavin, your policy here is in contradiction to ADA. ADA does not say "and on a short leash." It's on a short leash or under voice. There's that "or" part. So you guys are conveniently taking the first part of ADA, chopped off the rest, and in that you're not under compliance. We're not here to determine that. That's for you to go back and get that right. But I am certainly moving towards a violation myself because you've not allowed this person to have access to a public meeting on that date, and that would be my position. So that part we can.
Right.
Move on.
Anybody else? Okay, so I think what we need to do is continue this item because we're based upon advice of legal counsel regarding due process, not missing the actual party who brought the complaint forward. We can't bring it to a conclusion.
Through the
Won't
chair.
be able to make a rebuttal and be present for the actual vote for the determination.
Through the chair, if I could respond to that. He's been here on many cases. What he's said in arguments and rebuttals is almost the same thing, pretty much what he said here. I don't think he'd have anything to add. And I'm not supposing what he would want or not want, but just having seen enough of this complainant, I think we'd be doing him a disservice to stop proceedings at this point because, as demonstrated today, he's not getting access into this building to hear his case. So I would feel more inclined to continue with this and move forward with, what work we have done. I think that would be, in the interest of justice in this case. That would be my position.
Chair Wolf, the other item, the sheriff's complaint, he's going to have to come back here for that anyways.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we have the ability to continue to hear items without the respondent being here. We've done that in the past.
I'm just overly disturbed by this whole scenario right now. I just feel while I understand what you're saying with regards to what's in the best interest of the public in that way, at the same time it's what's in the best interest of the complainant that brought this case forward. And, they should have every opportunity, whether they may in the past, would wanted us to move forward or not on it. If he's not here or has transmitted that and told us that that's what he wants to have done, we should not assume anything and should take direction from him at that point. Member Kanata.
I'm torn on this because if we continue and he comes back, what's to prevent the same thing from happening? They don't let him in with the dog. The dog is outside. The dog gets taken away again. This is not the first time it's happened.
Well, the ADA does not require that a public agency provide any accommodation for regards to watching or monitoring the animal while they're at any time. Okay, but at the same time, we could possibly interest a separate entity and refer to either Member Hinsey or I could find somebody, and there are a number of places or people that will do that. A rescue, might have somebody that might be interested that could, kind of dog sit during a meeting or something like that. Member Josh Wolf.
I mean, I've never had a situation where the actual case itself, the violation, repeated itself in front of us, preventing him from being able to be at a public meeting. Now, obviously, he wasn't forced to leave the meeting literally. It was the circumstances of it. But it creates this weird issue that I don't really know. As you said, Member Kanata, the next time he's here, we have no means to rectify this. But I think more importantly, beyond this case and the item after it, is finding a violation here isn't actually a remedy to the problem at hand. We can say that the complainant sunshine rights were violated, Brown Act was violated, that he wasn't provided access, but nothing we have can change directly the ADA rules. We don't govern that in any way, and it's outside of our jurisdiction. But just for the sake of my own knowledge, does anyone have any recommendations for the process one could utilize to?
I would just say that if you find that the documentation that has been provided in the packet does not provide you with enough information that you can come to a positive conclusion, either for or against one of the party, the respondent, okay, then I would suggest that we ask for an independent expert to answer the question for us so that we can do that. It's not unheard of. We've done this before in other kinds of cases. We've done it with regards when back in the early 2000s with regards to PDFs and metadata. We had a number of experts come in and talk to us about metadata and how that is part of the public record and it needs to be shown. And the city had to change its ways of how it scanned in documents. So there are things like that. So we've had many times.
I think I was misunderstood. I'm saying that we can find a violation, but none of that moves forward in terms of changing the complainant's ability to access future meetings.
No, I would say that it does, because if you find that an expert's information provides you with information that supports the petitioner, okay, and you want to find a violation based upon that information, that would then give instruction or give advice or counsel or whatever information to the city that their policy is incorrect, that they're going about this the wrong way. And that it just raises a flag for them. Now there needs to be a next step. The next step is somebody has to move forward and get them to change something, change the policy.
Through the chair.
Hold on, Member LaHood.
At this point, while hearing from more experts and more information would be interesting, it does seem, and maybe Member Kate can talk about the legal aspect of this, but it does seem that we have enough information to show that the city policy appears to be in conflict with ADA. And if we know that right now, and that is hindering access to a public meeting, I think we can find on that now, and we deal with the one. And even though Mr. Tedessa is going to have to come back for the other piece, it seems as though we have enough information on this item to act.
Okay, so, well, you can't speak for everyone here because
I agree with that.
everybody may have a different opinion about how they interpret that.
Would love to hear other opinions.
Right. So, I understand from your perspective, and if it's the interest of the body to move forward, and you want to make a motion to do that, but we have to go through the rest of the procedure. We have to go through rebuttals. That's part of our procedure. We cannot deny that right.
So through the chair, could we not go through rebuttals, note that the respondent is, the complainant is not here for rebuttals, and then entertain a motion?
No, I won't allow it. You can't disrupt you can't bypass our process.
You could argue that he's been up because of all the back and forth questions.
Argue all you want. I won't allow
It's not
it.
a rebuttal.
It's not a rebuttal. The rebuttal has to come from the person.
And what if we make a motion before rebuttals? We can always make a motion.
You can't make a motion before rebuttals for determination, because that's part of the process. Rebuttals and then motion.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
neither party has to make a rebuttal.
But they have to choose not to make a rebuttal. I mean, that's the point here. And Mr. Tedesca was here. He didn't choose to leave because he didn't want to make a rebuttal.
Yeah.
He was forced to leave because his service animal was taken away. This is not like it's like a member of his family.
I would also
Totally
say
understand that.
He probably would want to.
And that's why I feel like having him come back, we're going to be in this endless loop.
It's not an endless loop. You just finish the process. That's all. There's no loop. We just finish the process. He gets to do his rebuttal. The other party gets to do their rebuttal. Then we get to debate on what the motion should be.
Yeah.
And then we're done. And then we did, either make a motion or not, approve the action or not. It's just our process. That's all.
Question: Can he, if this is continued, and we get a communication by Mr. Tedesca saying, "Please carry on without me," does that give us enough?
Absolutely.
Okay. To that point, and I wish Victor was here because he might remember this off the top of his head. But I think he's sent communications to our clerk, yourself, and Victor in the past, saying exactly that. I can't be here. Now that's going to past issues, not necessarily this one, but so I'm trying to find a way forward.
We have in the past have moved on cases without the one or the other parties present because there was enough evidence moving forward from the complaint process that it was so obvious.
Okay.
So that if the other party did not attend and we decided that because they've already conceded, like no contest, then that's one thing. That's a particular scenario. That is not this scenario.
Right, but this was heard in EOTC. It was supposed to be heard by us last time. It got heard again this time.
Member Hinsey first. Member Hinsey?
I think also that if he wanted to call in for his rebuttal at a future meeting, I think given that is a reasonable accommodation, in this case we could potentially make that. I also feel like you and I can work on something offline.
Do you have his number?
Finding.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite following you. You want to...
Well, if, for example, he wanted to call in
future
because
meeting.
he was...
Oh, for a future meeting.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, got it.
Calling in for his rebuttal, I think in this case we could potentially make a reasonable accommodation for that.
Mm-hmm.
You and I could probably also work together offline to come up with something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, I think it's totally doable.
Member Joshua?
So, in regards to Member Highland's thought process, at the last meeting when Mr. Tedeschi was scheduled, we explicitly asked him whether we should move forward with the hearing in his absence if he's unable to enter the building, and he said no. So, to whatever extent we have knowledge of his intentions, it's to not move forward in his absence.
I didn't remember it that way. I remember the opposite.
Either way, I will not violate a person's due process.
Yeah.
This is their hearing. They're the ones that brought it forward, and I don't, unless there's compelling reason for us to continue with it. He was already here. It's a little bit different than if they didn't show up and we felt that in the interest of public justice, that the determination would make a difference for everybody, which I think this would. I just feel very hesitant about doing that.
So do you want to take a temperature as to do we think we have enough or not? Is that
I
an
would
option?
just call for a motion to continue.
So moved.
Moved by Member Hinsey.
And if you say no to that, it indicates that you're willing to go forward with it.
It just means that we're stuck in this stalemate. You would have to overrule my decision. All of you would have to vote to overrule my decision not to move us forward.
What does that even mean?
It's a Robert's rules to you appeal the decision of the chair.
But you're saying it needs to be unanimous against you, is what you're saying?
Not unanimous.
Oh, just a majority against you. Okay.
But what about the feeling that someone feels they have enough information and they like to make a motion regardless? I thought you could always make a motion.
But the problem is we're violating our own process. Our own process requires a rebuttal before a motion is made and debate before a motion is made. Mm-hmm. So we'd be violating our own policy.
We couldn't make a motion now and then have rebuttals make another motion. I've seen that happen. I mean, we've done that, whether it's accurate or not.
But a motion for what? You can't make a motion to find violation before a rebuttal. It's just not. It's never happened before. It just never happens. And I don't think that we could get. I'm not sure, but if you want to waive the rules, take a vote to waive the rules. You want to test that, you can do that. I'm going to say no.
Others might say yes.
Others may. That's true.
I'm actually in favor of a continuance, but if one really wants to look at how one could proceed forward, again, I'm in favor of continuance and not doing this, but Mr. Tedeschi did elect to leave, which means that if he's not there for the rebuttal, he has inadvertently elected to not be there. So I think there's an argument for Mr. Hyland's train of thought here, but we already have a motion for a continuance, but we're waiting for a second, so I will second the motion for continuance.
Okay. It's moved by Member Hinsey, seconded by Member Josh Wolf. Any further debate? Member Kanata.
Can we add to that motion continuance with the option of Mr. Tedeschi not being here or being here on the phone?
At his discretion.
Yeah.
Or at his instruction. If you want, you can ask the maker if she'd like to take that friendly amendment.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And
there was a previous time that someone suggested someone being here over the phone, a complainant, and we were told that's not possible. Does the disability side of it
absolutely
overcome that not being possible, and there is no issue of allowing them over to phone accommodation?
That would be a
Can our
accommodation.
ASA confirm that or not?
ASA.
ADA.
DCA.
ADA.
What was the question?
That we can, within the Americans with Disabilities Act, make an allowance for Mr. Tedeschi to be present over the phone.
He can make a telephonic appearance for this meeting regardless of ADA. You don't need to go through that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do that analysis. It's not necessary.
Well, in the past, I was told that a telephone appearance wasn't possible, but okay.
Oh, no, it is, absolutely.
Once it's happening, and we'll make the arrangements.
Yeah.
Okay.
We-
Anyhow, I have.
No, in confidence that it is allowed.
Yeah,
All right, great. I'm on board with the adjustment to the second.
No, we don't even need to add it if it's something we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Any public comment on this motion to continue? Seeing no public comment, please call the roll.
Member Hinsey?
Yes.
Member Hinsey, aye. Member Wolf?
Aye.
Member Wolf, aye. Member Hyland?
No.
Member Hyland, no. Member Kate? Member Kate, aye. Member LaHood?
Aye.
Member LaHood, aye. Member Canada?
Aye.
Member Kanata, aye. Member Tesfaye, absent. Member Martin?
Aye.
Member Martin, aye. Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Wolf, aye. The motion passes.
Okay, please call the next item.
And continue to,
We'll let her call the item, and then we're going to,
continue both of them.
yeah.
Item number 4.
Yeah.
Item number 4, file number 18028, complaint filed by Denton Tedeschi against the Sheriff's Department for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 67.5 by restricting access to all meeting of any policy body in City Hall.
Okay, so I'll ask if the parties are here. Mr. Tedeschi. Mr. Tedeschi is not here. Is the Sheriff's Department present? Sheriff's Department is not present, so
Make a motion to continue the item.
moved by Member Hensy to continue. Is there a second?
Second, and if we could also ask in that continuance to have a more knowledgeable, the person that sets that city hall building management policy, whether it's Laurie Mazzola
Gavin?
or Mr. Gavin, but maybe someone that actually, pens that policy, someone more knowledgeable or responsible for that policy to be present at that
So that
next
would
meeting.
be for the first one. This
the first case.
For
That's
the first
correct.
case.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll take that under advisement and
Okay.
make it happen. Okay. So on this second item.
A second.
Okay. So it's been moved by Member Hensy, seconded by Vice Chair Hyland. Any discussion? Member Josh Wolf.
So I just had a thought, and I'm not sure whether compliance and amendments would be able to do anything here, but given the nature of there's a question about the leash law as it pertains to people's access to
Okay,
public.
Wait. We have a motion on the floor to continue. How is this pertinent?
It is. Let me.
Okay.
I don't know how to say it faster, but
Okay, go ahead.
in essence, file number 18028 and 18012 pertain to a issue that can't necessarily be adjudicated at Sunshine Task Force meetings due to difficulties of the complainant being able to attend. Is there a way to, through either our committee process or the entire task force, basically create a new file of this issue and the respondents involved that doesn't actually have the complainant as a party, so that we can move forward whether or not Tedeschi can make it or not around the actual violation, but around the policy which is in violation of the Sunshine Ordinance. This is why I think it relates to.
So we have, and I've asked in the past for like each member to take up an issue, and if it's something that we feel that is, there's some kind of problem that's happening throughout the city. We've had this issue around IDRs being randomly converted into regular requests and removing the whole IDR status. And that was deemed to have been a significant problem through several different departments. That could be something that could be reviewed. We have never really quite adjudicated as a body by ourselves to find violation on ourselves by ourselves. Now, what we can do research on things through committee, either through EOT or through compliance and amendments, and find that the city is in violation of within certain policies and whatnot, and then create a memo stating that. And we make a formal motion to say we find this particular or those policies or these passages are in violation of Sunshine, and we request that they be changed or whatever the request is to be done or demand. We can do that. So sure, but it has to be more of a kind of a. What's the word?
Advisory.
Yeah, it's more. It's not. Well, more. It's more than advisory. It's really. We're not making a direct violation on that actual department, so to speak. We'd be causing to bring to light a violation of certain policies that exist in that way, and we're requesting those policies to be changed.
And procedurally, is the time to do that by modifying this motion to include a referral to one of the committees, or can that just be done
I
ad
would
hoc?
say that if a committee is interested in taking up this issue and wants to bring and then comes to some conclusion that it wants the task force to take action on, it can do that. So if a committee feels, or if the body here wants to direct a committee to look into this and come with a recommendation and an action, to bring to the body, we can do that too. You want to make that directive, you can do that too.
Okay.
It could be a separate.
Yeah, it's a separate process. I mean, we have had certain issues that we've had sent to committee in general to review, because it takes up too much time to do it here. You give the committee can do it in multiple meetings and have any number of experts or
we could do
Specifically in this case, I'm looking for how we can advance this case, which has this problem without.
You're not going to advance the case. You're going to advance the issue.
Yes,
So-
advance the conflict, advance a resolution to this larger general conflict that is presented, this particular case for moving forward.
So I've given you several options to be able to do that. Pick one if you want to do it. But I want to move on with the meeting. We have other people here waiting for their cases. We can discuss it at the end of the meeting if you want.
We can do it under item 13. You can open it as a new.
Right. The chair already said it could be established
At the
ad
committee
hoc
level.
from the committee level, so there's no need for a motion.
That's right. Okay. Next item. Oh, we didn't vote. I'm sorry. There was no public comment.
And you were going to give instructions as to who shows up at the continuance as well. You were going to think about that.
Who's going to show up?
From the.
Oh, no, but that was for the
Right.
first item.
Just remind you.
Yeah, no, I got that.
Okay.
So please call the roll.
Member Hensy?
Aye.
Member Hensy, aye. Member Highland?
Aye.
Member Highland, aye. Member Kate? Member Kate, aye. Member LaHood?
Aye.
Member LaHood, aye. Member Kanata?
Aye.
Member Kanata, aye. Member Tesfaye, absent. Member Wolf?
Aye.
Member Josh Wolf?
Aye again.
Member Martin?
Aye.
Member Martin, aye. Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Please call the next item.
Item number 7, complaint filed by William Clark against the Arts Commission for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 6716 by failing to make meeting minutes available in a timely manner, specifically the June 5th, 2018 Advisory Committee of the Street Artists and Craft Examiners. I think we've already discussed that Mr. Clark has said that he's unavailable today.
Right. And nobody's here from the Arts Commission? No. Okay. So how would you like to dispense with this? Shall we continue the item?
Motion to continue.
Moved by Member Hensy,
Second.
second by Member Kanata. Any public comment on the continuance? Any more? No public comment. Any more debate on the item? Please call the roll.
Who made the motion?
Member Hensy, seconded by Member Kanata.
Member Hensy?
Aye.
Member Hensy, aye. Member Kanata?
Aye.
Member Kanata, aye. Member Highland?
Aye.
Member Highland, aye. Member Kate? Member LaHood?
Aye.
Member LaHood, aye. Member Tesfaye, absent. Member Wolf?
Aye.
Member Wolf, aye. Member Martin?
Aye.
Member Martin, aye. Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye.
Hold on.
Chair-
Member Kate, there's a motion on to continue. I think you got up after. Yeah.
William Clark.
Aye.
Member Kate, aye. Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Wolf, the motion continue passes.
Okay, please call the next item.
Item number 8, file number 18054, Complaint filed by Mike Black against the Office of the Controller for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 6725 by inappropriately invoking provisions for extension of time to respond due to the voluminous nature of a request or need to consult with another department.
Okay, complaints and amendments? You had found jurisdiction. Is there anything you need to? Okay, great. Okay, Mr. Black.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm the complainant,
Hold on.
Mike Black.
Hold on. Let's get the clock reset and.
Okay, I'm going to be referring to several emails, and they're all in the task force packet, except for a couple that I printed out if you need them. On the morning of June 19th, 2018, I submitted to the Controller's Office an immediate disclosure request for their records regarding any new hearing officer hired in 2018 for the city's vicious and dangerous dog hearings. Within 14 minutes, that email was forwarded to Joyce Kimotsuki and in the Controller's Contracts Department to be processed in compliance with the Sunshine Ordinance by the close of business the following day, June 20th, a process of seeking responsive records that Todd Ridstrom, in both his eventual response to the IDR 10 days later, as well as in person before this task force on August 28th, claimed had taken longer. In fact, as proven by emails provided to me by the Controller's Office months later in response to a different IDR, that process had been completed by the afternoon of June 20th. At 12:46 p.m., Joyce Kimotsuki emailed Matthew Wiggins of the Controller's Office, informing him that the Controller's Office had not hired any new hearing officer in 2018. At 12:53 p.m., Matthew Wiggins emailed Todd Ridstrom a draft reply to my IDR that truthfully stated, quote, "After a thorough search, the Controller's Office does not have any records responsive to your request. To date, the Controller's Office has not hired any new hearing officers." Nevertheless, 3 hours later, the Controller's Office emailed me something very different. Quote, "The Controller's Office is currently reviewing our departmental records to see if any are responsive," unquote, and invoked an extension of 14 days to consult with another department. That email on its face was untrue, and deliberately so, as proven by the fact that in violation of Section 67.21c, the Controller's Office never referred me to the one city department that they knew had been involved with managing hearing officers for the vicious and dangerous dog hearings, the City Administrator's Office. Indeed, at 12:07 p.m. on June 19th, Joyce Kimotsuki had raised the prospect of contacting the City Administrator's Office to see what records that office had provided to me. The Controller and the City Administrator had been working closely together on the hearing officer issue ever since one of the hearing officers had made racially prejudicial remarks about an Asian American who had appeared before him on April 19th. The two offices shared responsibility because up to that time, all such hearing officers were independent contractors contracted by the Controller's Office, and because in December 2017, the City Administrator's Office had taken over the scheduling of hearing officers. Todd Ridstrom himself scheduled a meeting for April 30th to address the looming scandal, a meeting that included Deputy City Administrator Jennifer Johnston. And on May 1st, Joyce Kimotsuki was advising Ms. Johnston just how involved and time-consuming it would be for the Controller to hire new hearing officers. Meanwhile, the city administrator was even keeping the Controller's Office abreast of my activities, emailing the Controller on June 1st, not 3 weeks before my June 19th IDR, copies of records the city administrator had just provided to me in response to an IDR regarding hearing officers. And by June 1st, the city administrator was in fact already hiring the second new hearing officer of the year. But the only other department ever mentioned in the Controller's internal emails was the city attorney's office, in the email that forwarded my IDR to Joyce Kimotsuki. If there were any responsive records, they would have to be checked by attorneys, of course. But, of course, there were no records. They didn't exist. And there was no record of any other department ever being consulted. All of this plainly demonstrates that the Controller's request on June 20th for 14 more days in which to respond to my IDR was pure obstructionism that shouldn't be tolerated. Thank you.
Are there any persons or witnesses to provide any facts or evidence on behalf of the complainant, the petitioner? Seeing none, respondent, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Todd Reedstrom, Deputy Controller. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you. In the packet of your materials, you'll find a number of items, and approximately on page 156 to 158, there's a chain of events that lays out the facts. As I mentioned, my name is Todd Reedstrom. I'm Deputy Controller. Our Controller's Office serves as the city's Chief Accounting Officer, Auditor, as well as we do the whistleblower administration for the city and county. We take our duties seriously, and we also strive to be a model department that is responsive as well as completely transparent. We run our website as well as Open Book SF, which provides hundreds of thousands of data for all vendor payments, all employee payments, which are available. Thousands of downloads occur every year. And in addition, we do email intake as well as through the city's Nextdoor public records request. We've received 834 public information requests last year. 49 were IDRs, and we have one complaint against our department, Mr. Black. So let me walk you through the chain of events and what duty and care we took. On June 19th, Mr. Black asked for all public records in possession, in custody, and also under the control of the Controller's Office. The Controller's Office runs the administrative plumbing, the electronic plumbing for the city's procurement system, for the financial system, for the HR system, and for the payroll system. In addition to that, he wanted all written communications, all emails related to such hirings. He was very broad in that request. That was on June 19th, 9:07 a.m. Our staff dutifully took upon themselves to start that search. It is impossible, it's humanly impossible for people to finish that in a matter of moments. That request is very broad and expansive. On the Controller's Office on June 20th at 3:58 p.m., responded. That was the very next day, saying that we need to consult another department, and we will endeavor to complete the response even before the 14-day extension, which is authorized under the code. Why? Mr. Black's request was not specific to the Controller's Office hiring, specifically the Controller's Office making the hire. We have many records under our control and under our administration. Further, for this case, we also had done a hiring pool for departments to use to hire hearing officers for vicious dogs. And I want to make sure that we go through that specifically. We administered the pool of eligible potential contractors for city departments, including the Animal Care and Control Department or the city administrator's office, to be able to use potentially eligible contractors to hire for scheduling of those hearings. That, by the nature of it, requires us to reach out to other departments to the degree to be helpful, additionally helpful to the questioner, Mr. Black. In addition to that, we also, as I mentioned, are responsible for the city's whistleblower program, as well as reach out to other departments like the city attorney's office, as well as the Department of Human Resources in matters of hiring or personnel actions, or that may be subject to the protective and restricted release of data for the whistleblower program. So it's a very common routine for our department to have to and routinely reach out to other departments. That does not happen in a course of an hour or usually a day. It oftentimes takes a number of days, especially as folks are on leave or otherwise scheduled for city business. The next day, 4:47 p.m., 49 minutes later, that same day to our response, Mr. Black further clarified his request. All names of any and all independent contractors who are currently under contract with the city and county. And so the very next morning, we responded timely and completely and provided that information. In addition to that, on June 27th, the following Wednesday, our office found records that were responsive, which directly counters the assertion of the draft message that Mr. Black is saying is somehow finding evidence against us. So respectfully, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those, but I respectfully request you to review the materials in your packet. Happy to answer any questions, and respectfully ask that you find this complaint without merit and close the matter.
Thank you. Are there any persons or witnesses who provide any facts or evidence on behalf of the respondent? Seeing none, members? Vice Chair Howland?
Mr. Is it Rickstrom?
Reinsch.
Let me get your. Could you pronounce your name again for me?
Pardon me?
Your name again was?
Riedstrom.
Riedstrom. Sorry about that. Okay. So it sounds like there's two different IDRs going on here, even though you might be interpreting the second one as a clarification of the first. I think we see that as two separate ones. It looks like you answered the second one in a timely fashion. That's great. The first one you answered on the 27th. Is that correct?
We believe we answered both of them in entirety. We have provided that information based upon the information.
Right. So the first one
we
you
have
invoked an
released.
extension, and then you answered it. You sent the materials on the 27th. Is that right?
That's correct.
Within the 14 days.
That's correct.
And the information you sent them was the names of those hired in 2018, as stipulated in the first IDR.
That is correct, with the addition and the clarification that we have provided all the records we can, that we did withhold some records, and we withholded them because of attorney-client privilege. We gave the specific code section, and also because they constituted private personnel records of the city, and again, the code section. So we reviewed this information with the city attorney's office, and we hold this in our responsibility and our duty of care very seriously. And so I ask you to note that in your packets as well, and thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Rydstrom, you mentioned whistleblower several times. Have you claimed this to be a whistleblower case?
Our office can never claim or otherwise dispute that it is or isn't a whistleblower case. That is not allowed by our office under the government code.
Who does then? I mean, it would have to be somebody that comes forward, right?
That's a possible person that could provide it. I would refer legal questions to city attorney's office.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have them.
Thank you. Any other questions, folks?
To me, it just seems like the second IDR I'm happy with. First IDR, was the extension reasonable? And if so,
well, what is this complaint is focused on which one?
Well, there's both. There's two IDRs. Sorry, hold on.
Hold on. Let's get some clarification.
Yeah,
Mr. Black, come forward and give us your clarification.
My initial complaint is IDR is the only IDR I'm complaining about. I never received a single document responsive to that IDR because no document exists at the controller's office.
They said they sent you something on the 27th. What did they say?
This was all stuff about my initial request was for any new hearing officer that had been hired in 2018.
Right. And what did they send you?
Mr. Richardson described it as a broad request. It's only broad if they had hired anybody. They had not hired anybody.
What did they send you on the 27th in response to that?
I got a bunch of documents that were responsive to what Mr. Ridstrom calls the clarification IDR, which was asking about, well, then identify who do you have as hearing officers right now. And that's when they began to then give me documents relative to hearing officers who were hired before 2018. Had nothing to do with the initial IDR.
Okay, because it sounds like they already gave you that in responding to the second IDR, which is not this case. But what he's claiming that on the 27th, they sent you documents redacted that were responsive to your initial IDR. What exactly did they send you on the 27th? Do you have it handy, or do you
I did not get a single document responsive to the first one. And in fact, on the 29th, he emailed me and he clarified the controller's office has not hired anybody in 2018 as a hearing officer, and we don't intend to.
Okay, hold on one second, Mr. Black. Mr. Rydstrom, if you could approach. So what exactly did you send on the 27th in response to the 19th IDR?
I'd refer you to your packet. It's a very long list of materials that we've provided, and I believe it's on page 1. Let me just find it here. Is
it 157?
156, 157, 158.
This has everything to do with...
Hold on.
Were hired previously.
157 goes through the chain of events. 158 provides all of the relevant records responsive that were provided. In addition to that, the timeline of events is summarized there. And again, the answer to the question for this controller's office hiring of hearing officers, that's very straightforward. That we do not hire hearing officers. We administer a pool where departments are eligible to use that pool to contract with and to hire those hearing officers. And so Mr. Black's request on, I believe it was June 19th, is that very expansive, large request, which would require us to contact other departments.
Okay, so are we clear that the June 19th IDR was a request for all people hired into that pool in 2018? Are we agreed on that?
No, we're not agreed on that,
Okay,
because
why
that
not?
request is under the control, let's go through the specific wording of it, because I think that is the potential confusion. It is specifically all public records in the possession, custody, or control of the controller's office for vicious dogs, including any written materials, any emails, any background information, any resumes, any CVs, any contracts. And so, as I mentioned before, we are responsible for running the systems of the city, the HR systems, the payroll systems, the purchasing systems, the payment systems. Any typical month, we process with all 55 departments about 40,000 payments. Every 2 weeks, we process 35,000 paychecks for city employees. And so when you ask our office all payments or all records under our possession or custody, we try wherever we can to refer you to Open Book SF, where we've made them publicly available if they are data records that are non-confidential in nature. So we take it very seriously.
Okay, just going back to that original IDR, I agree his language is a little voluminous, but looking at it, how many hearing officers were hired into that pool in 2018? Can you answer that question? Like, what's the number of people?
There were three eligible contractors that departments could contract with out of that pool.
That's not my question. How many people did you hire into that pool that were then eligible? In other words, how many people were added to that pool in 2018? I believe that is what the complainant's question is.
None, and we responded to that question the very next day after it was asked.
Saying that we don't do it that way. We have a revolving pool, and then he had a second IDR where you revealed that pool. Is that correct?
No. And so the chain of events and the specific questions are on June 20th, 4:47 p.m., Mr. Black clarified his question, saying the names of any and all independent contractors which are currently under our control.
So, Mr. Reitzer, I think, the way I'm reading this, that's a second question. So I'm trying to bring you back to the original IDR. How many people were hired into that 2018 pool? You're saying none. You're saying your office hired these contractors all prior to 2018, and that comprised the pool.
No, I'm not saying that. We developed a pool. We issued an RFP in 2016. Proposers could submit qualifications to be eligible to be in that pool. In that pool, then, there were 3 eligible respondents, at which then departments could utilize the services of those and contract for hire and schedule those hearing officers. And so, by definition, we do not hire or schedule those hearing officers. That's coordinated through the city administrator's office, which respectfully we would be helpful to the questioner to reach out to other departments then to find responsive information. There was no additional pool candidates that were added to that after that 2016 request for qualifications to be an eligible contractor in that pool. So for that question, it's very easy and very straightforward, and we can help with. To the degree he's talking about hiring, whether it's a contractor hire or an employee hire, it's impossible for our department to know that without consulting another department.
Okay, one last question. I just want to make sure we're getting the macro and the micro here. I know you guys administer a lot of different, I guess, contractors for different departments. But specifically what he's asking, which are, I guess, officers that were potentially used by ACC. Are you saying it's 3 people or 3 entities from which city bodies can then contract people?
The RFP respondents who were successful was Mr. Louis Castori, Mr. John Denny, and Mr. Jeff Foster. And those were the list of pre-qualified firms that satisfied the October 14, 2016 pool.
Firms. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rydstrom, I just wanted to ask you, if you don't specifically do the hiring for this, and that is what this requester was asking for information, why did you feel the need to do diligence? Why did you just not refer him to the department that actually would be doing the hiring so that he could ask them, kind of the person or the department that actually is going to be supervising? Or
we routinely do that after we know who the hiring officer is or who the hiring department is. In this case, we would want to call the department to see if they were contracting to hire or if they were doing employment to hire. We would have no way of doing that, so we would routinely reach out to the CAO's office or to DHR. Previously, Animal Care and Control, and the staffing of these was the police department and Animal Care and Control. And so at this request, we would reach out to CAO's office and also other departments to see if there was responsive records, and then respectfully refer the questioner should we find those to be the case.
So you weren't sure who was actually...
I didn't know. I did not know.
Okay, well, okay. I got you on that. Okay. All right. Anything else, folks? Should we move to rebuttals? Okay. All right, Mr. Rydstrom, you're first for any rebuttal. Hold on. Please set the clock. Oh, you did. Okay.
I just want to thank you for your review of the matter or matters, however many ways the complainant wishes to argue it. Our office respects the process. As I mentioned, we have thousands of information requests satisfied 24/7 through our website, where that data is easily accessible and public information. We've had over 800 public information requests. We have one complainant before you today for all of last year. So we take this very seriously and respectfully request for you to, after your thorough review of the materials, to find this complainant is without merit and close the matter.
Thank you. Mr. Black, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal.
I just want to make the point that Mr. Hyland is exactly right. The whole point of the initial IDR is I was asking who was hired in 2018. And in fact, on June 29th, Mr. Rydstrom emailed me declaring, "We confirm that the Controller's Office has not hired by the end of the day on June 20th, 2018, or thereafter, nor is the Controller's Office planning to hire any new hearing officers for the vicious and dangerous dog hearings. There was no reason I should not have gotten that response on June 20th. As their draft email said that to me. It was taken to Todd Rydstrom by Matthew Wiggins. This is a draft email. Dear Mr. Black, we don't have any responsive records because we didn't hire anybody in 2018. And yet I didn't get the actual answer until the 29th of June. He's playing with this word hired.
Okay, members.
I just have a question, Mr. Rydstrom. I don't want to butcher your last name. Rydstrom, it shouldn't be this hard for me.
Rydstrom.
It's fine. It's Swedish. It's Rydstrom.
Rydstrom. Okay.
Rydstrom.
I do see that draft email, January 20, 12:53. I think he was preparing, I think someone in the office was preparing a response to him that same day. Was there an issue with the language of it? I mean, is there a reason it didn't go out?
Yes, thank you for asking that clarifying question. There's absolutely a reason why it didn't go out. We have very hardworking staff, and we have a review process for that material. And I would like to take you back to the question of the requestor. The requestor is asking us for all records in our possession, custody, or control of the controller's office, including all written communications, all emails. Our office has over 300 employees. The city has over 35,000. If all emails and all written materials are wanted, it is humanly impossible to complete that type of a broad search. For an individual employee to review their files or an individual employee's work unit to review theirs, it is possible. And so I believe that that was a genuine attempt to partially complete the process, but to provide an incomplete response, albeit very timely, gives a potential misrepresentation of what we do or do not have. And you will see then on the 27th, we provided additional information to Mr. Black. And so I think it's part of the duty and care that we have to review the completeness, the timeliness, and also balance that to make sure that we are thorough in that process.
I'm just curious that, and it's page 149. Was it a fear that if it's not, I'm just trying to figure out, was it a fear that if you send that response out and it's not correct, then you have to go back to them and say, oh, there is information, that could create its own set of issues?
It's not a fear, sir. It's a duty. We have a duty and a responsibility to be completely timely and also responsive and accurate. And we take that duty very seriously.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I make one little point about the evidence that you have? I got those emails, like the email that's the draft reply to me, because in September, I asked the Controller's Office for all their written communications from April 26th to June 29th that in any way referenced or referred to hearing officers. That's how I got that information. In all of those emails, there is no mention of any other referral or consultation with another agency or another department, absolutely nothing. As I mentioned in my original address, the only other agency that's ever mentioned is the city attorney's office. Because if there had been, of course, responsive records, they would have been vetted by an attorney. But there's no mention of any other department or HR or the payroll department. There is no mention of hearing officers or any other department relative to hearing officers from April 26th to June 29th. And those are their records.
Thank you. All right, members, how should we dispense with this? Do you need more information?
I mean, my feeling is, in retrospect, they may have been overly careful, but at least they followed the process. They invoked an extension. We can debate as to whether that was necessary or not, again, in hindsight, but they did provide an answer. Based on that, I don't see any violations on my side.
Mr. Black, please. Mr. Black. Member Canada.
I mean, the only thing I see is the 14-day extension instead of 10, and that seems lots of departments do that. Some of them refer to the Good Government Guide saying they can do 14, but I don't see it. I don't see this as the department trying to hold back records.
Member Josh Wolf.
They did it in 10 anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if we had seen the invocation of the 14-day extension and then a lack of response within 10 days, I think there'd be something there. But I'm not sure there's a violation to ask for an extension longer than you're allowed and then stick to the timeline that is governed.
Mr. Black, please. We're just trying to debate so we can come to a conclusion.
And at the end of the day, there was a second IDR, which I realize is not part of the complaint, that simplified the question and got a response as an IDR. I think that probably it might have been possible, rather than asking for an extension, to have called the complainant and said, what exactly are you looking for? How can we get you an answer the next day? But I don't think that that level of support is required under the law.
Could also suppose that the person thought maybe they'd also answered the first IDR in the second IDR, and I could see how that could be interpreted that way. But
well, I'm wondering if, based upon Mr. Black's assertion that a conclusion came that there wasn't anybody hired, how is that to take such a long time to find out? And that a response, to claim that there were no responsive records, and then the responsive record is there are, that there isn't anybody hired. Why couldn't that, why did that take so long to do? I understand the Controller's Office response to that is being, well, this was considered to be voluminous because the IDR had asked for all and every and any records, and that might take a long time without it being request. Usually when that happens, most departments will request a narrowing. Can you give us a time frame? Can you give us a particular department? Can you, that kind of thing? That didn't happen necessarily here. They just went at it to due diligence to kind of do the whole thing. But the question is, we're just talking about one unit. It's not even a commission. It's one unit, for one hearing officer. We're not talking about, 20 hearing officers over the course of 10 years, and in that level of broad and voluminous in that kind of way. The question becomes is how do you then come to the conclusion of what Mr. Black was specifically asking for.
Through the chair, I had one more question for Mr. Riedstrom, if you could approach. So going back to the letter that my colleague here.
What page?
This is 149 in our package. Referred to. There's an email from you to, I guess, Matt, whoever Matt is, saying Joyce returns today, so she's best contact. And then he said he bounces it back to you saying, after consulting with Joyce, please see a proposed response below, including in red brackets, which just says, to date, Controller's Office has not hired any new hearing officers in 2008 for VDD, and that was sent back to you on June 20th. What's Matt's position?
Matt works in our central office, and he helps me review the inbox for the Controller's Office as well as next requests. He's a very thorough and very helpful public information assistant.
Okay. And
that's part of his duties. He also has emergency management duties.
Got you. Who's the custodian of records? Is that yourself?
In our case, departmentally, the custodian would be our administrative office, and then they report to me.
Okay. Is Matt in that office?
He's in the administrative division. He's in the emergency management team and works in our central office, and his part-time duties is to assist with public information requests.
Okay. So I guess the question is, when this was bounced back to you, why didn't you then just send that on that day?
Because if I were to do that, that would be potentially misleading and misrepresentative about the request. The request, let's go back to that if I may, was all records in possession and custody and control of the Controller's Office for all written communications, all contracts, all resumes,
Let
all
me interrupt
CVs.
you there. I appreciate all that. could you not have said, we're still looking into, all the other things, but our immediate answer to this piece is this. We'll keep digging on the other things if you'd like us to do something to that effect. I appreciate your track record and your thoroughness. That's great. It's not many departments that come in here that can say that. But in this case, this might have been okay to send this with the caveat that we're still digging. We're still trying to respond to the other pieces of your requests. And, a lot of times members of the public don't frame requests that cogently, and this seems to be a little bit of that. So, I don't know. It seems like this could have gone out with a caveat saying we're still looking, and we'll get back to you with the rest of it.
I appreciate your comments. I'll take that into consideration. And just to repeat for the timeline here, because it is a lot of material, within 48 hours, we had responded to that specific narrowing request. And so we do take this very seriously. And so your comments to reach out, to consider a phone call or otherwise, I'll take that to heart and consider that, because we do have a really good track record, and we do respond to the public, and we want to provide the information that we have.
Thank you. Nothing further from me.
The only question, Mr. Riedstrom, just before you take off, and I don't know if this sounds repetitive or not, so I'm just looking at Mr. Black's original request. I'm looking at it on the bottom of page 145, Tuesday, June 19th, 2018 at 9:07 a.m. to the controller. This is just a general email there, and he's specifically asking, even though it says any and all public records in possession with regards to hiring of vicious and dangerous, 2018. Okay, the question my concern is how many records do you have to go through in order just to find out if anybody has been hired? Why would it take so long to do that? Than more than a couple of days to make a phone call to? It's got to be one of three departments, right? So.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So you're asking me how long would it take to determine if someone has been hired? Mm-hmm. Are you assuming that it's a contract hire? Are you assuming that it's an employee to be hired? And then which departments would you assume would be hiring that? Historically, in the case of Vicious Dog, it's been the police department. It's been animal care and control. It's been the scheduling of the city administrator's office. Should I presume, based upon this, it's only a contract hire versus an employee hire? We will not make that assumption or pretend like we can read the mind of the requester. We take every public information request seriously, consider it, review what we would have under our custodial or care, and when that is a piece of data and a piece of information that is the responsibility of the business owning department, we would then reach out to that. And so I think that's a great question. I'll take it back and we'll consider that as our administrative, because we do try to be very responsive as quickly as possible. And we responded within 48 hours with the clarification that was provided.
Yeah, I know, for the second IDR. Yeah,
yes,
no, I'm just want to focus. The complaint is specifically on the first IDR, not the second one. He has no issue with the second request. The issue is with the first request of why it took so long to get him a response. And so my question is let me put it a different way. Once a person is hired through the pool and a contract has been approved and completed, who then has that contract? Who gets that contract?
Administratively, we maintain it if it's a pool participant contractor, and then the scheduling and the calendaring or the hiring to do the hearing would be the city administrator's office.
Okay, and so
if it's a contract hire.
I understand that. With regards to your at first blush, when this request came in, this VDD unit. was that known in the office to be a contract hire? I mean, you provide a pool of contractors, right? So obviously it would have been a contractor, right?
It's not obvious. And so that is an assumption that I will not make as a matter of our due process and also our thoroughness. And so I'm not going to assume I'm knowing what the specifically is delimiting, or I should answer a question that I can answer within 2 minutes or 1 minute. I'll take it seriously. We'll review it. We'll review the materials that we have at our individual level, at our work unit level, to the degree it's a very broad request that is available on our open book SF website. We refer folks to that 24/7, where thousands of requests are satisfied every single month.
I appreciate that. With regards to this particular hire, is the classification for this hearing officer the same for many other hearing officers, or is this a unique classification?
That's going into the realm of civil service position classifications for hiring of employees. This is a contractor based upon requests for qualifications that was satisfied under a 2016 request for qualifications for pool development.
Okay.
And so if you want to talk about hiring classifications, I'd respectfully defer to the Department of Human Resources if it's an employee hire. That has been the case in previous years. To the degree it's a contractor hire, it would be outlined in the request for.
In the case of VDD, it had been a staff hire, not a contractor?
In the case of the pool that was piloted by our office, only beginning in 2016 and going through 2018, 3 contractors were qualified to be eligible by city departments to use for hearing officers.
That wasn't my question. I thought I heard you say that there could be somebody other than a contractor that could be hired for this position. It could be a civil service position.
It's possible. I wouldn't know that, though, without consulting another department.
Okay. Gotcha. But with regards to this particular VDD unit, is it clear? I mean, I obviously we don't know how your department works. Okay, so we're just trying to gather as much information to be able to make a determination of whether this was properly processed or not, and in a timely manner. It seems it just appears, I think, for many of us that I'm hearing from the questions, and that we're not quite sure why it would take so long for, to find out whether there was somebody hired or not for that position, whether it was contractor or otherwise.
So we responded to the requester on day 1, day 2. We responded again on the follow-up on day 7, and then we have no more further responsive information that we can provide, and we specifically provided in our response what records were withheld and what government code sections were allowed us under attorney-client privilege to withhold them. So respectfully, we did not use the entire 14 days. We responded within 24 hours, actually the very next morning, for the narrowed request. And our office has a lot of hardworking, responsible people, and we take this very seriously when we did this. So I respectfully will answer any question that you have, but I also appreciate you really looking at the timeline and the thoroughness of what we've done.
I don't think anybody's disputing the hard work that the staff has put into requests like this. I hear that you've repeated it several times, so I want you to recognize that we hear that, okay?
Thank you.
And we respect that people take the Sunshine Ordinance very seriously, okay?
Thank you.
We just also want to make sure that the Sunshine Ordinance was created for the public's interest, because they essentially own these documents. So we want to make sure that they have the ability of access to it at the same time in a timely manner. And that's what we're here to determine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Member LaHood.
I have a question for Mr. Riedstrom. was part of the reason for, even though you had a staff member who said, we believe that no one has been hired, did you doubt that because the answer was 0 and you expected it to be a different number? Or did that not have anything to do with your desire to have more time to make sure that that was a complete answer?
Oh, I believe it's a sincere answer based upon what that employee had access to the degree that you're asked to for all emails for your department. Those emails for 300 people or more are not accessible by that one person. That requires an email search, whether it be coordinated through our departmental MIS department or the citywide DT department, Department of Technology. So it is just humanly only so much is possible for one person to do within an hour or a day. And so the request was for everything, all written communication, a search of all networks, all emails, and so that is not humanly possible to answer that completely within 24 hours. Is there
I guess if no one was hired, then there would be 0 communications about the people who weren't hired. So it's not searching. I mean, since she came back with a quick response and said no one was hired, did you doubt that? Was there any doubt about that answer that caused you to think that more research needed to be done? Or was it, I guess I'm a little bit confused because did you doubt that answer and that's why you wanted more time to do additional research?
I believed that answer and did not doubt that answer with regard to contract hires and new contract hires for her contract unit for the pool. That answer within her purview, she would not have access to all hiring records of the city. That would be under the purview of the Department of Human Resources and under the Department of the City Administrator's Office, under the Department of the Police, or whoever is responsible for staffing that under the Public Health Code or otherwise. And so the question for us was all hiring, not new contracting. When we got the question for new contracting within 24 hours, the very next morning, we responded to that. And so it really is taking the care and duty to go through what is the requester asking. If they submit it by email, going through it, and then we'll routinely review it between Matt and I, or in this case, within Joyce and I, if it's a contract issue. But if it's more than a contract issue, if it has to do with personnel actions also require additional human resources review, and to the degree it's confidential or sensitive information, district city attorney review.
So just to be clear, when you received his initial IDR, you assumed this to be a personnel issue and not a contractor issue?
I understood it could be both.
Okay, but why did it take so long to figure out the contractor side if you had kind of an immediate response?
So long, sir, was June 21st, 11:08 a.m. The request came June 19th, 9:07 broadly, was narrowed the following day on June 20th, 4:47 p.m.
Okay.
It took us.
I see other dates here, so that's why I was seeing an April date, so that's why I was.
I'm happy to answer any other questions because there are a lot of dates, and so just want to make sure that we're helpful to to your body.
Thank you very much. All right, members, what do you like to do here?
Motion to find no violation.
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Vice Chair Hyland, second by Member Kate. Any further debate? Any public comment? Please call the roll.
Member Hyland? I'm sorry,
Aye.
Member Hyland? Member Kate? Member Kate, aye. Member Hensy?
Aye.
Member Hensy, aye. Member LaHood?
Aye.
Member LaHood, aye. Member Kanata?
Aye.
Member Kanata, aye. Member Tesfaye, absent. Member Wolf? Jay Wolf?
Aye.
Jay Wolf, aye. Member Martin?
Aye.
Member Martin, aye. Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Wolf, aye. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Call next item.
Can we do 5 minutes through the chair?
Oh, you want a 5-minute break?
Yeah, 'cause
Okay.
this next item's not going to be short.
Okay, great. We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Poor fella.
My watch keeps telling me to stand up.
My butt is telling me.
Yeah, you're doing really well.
I hope everybody had a good holiday. Yeah, it was good.
On or off?
No.
I paused the recording,
Okay,
so.
good.
Holiday was great. Yeah, we did. We did. How do I turn it? We're back online.
I call meeting back to order. Please call the next item.
Item number 9, file number 18075, complaint filed by Kevin Williams against District Attorney George Gascon for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sections 6725 and 67.29-5 by failing to respond to a request for public records in a timely and/or complete manner.
Okay, this was EOT. Do you have any summary or brief?
It's been so long, I don't.
It's October 16th. No, it's okay if you don't. Just move ahead. Okay,
Sorry, through Chair, if I can just add one thing. Just
Yep.
looking back at the notes, the respondents did not appear at the EOTC meeting. I think a letter was handed in last minute. We chose not to accept it. That's in the notes.
Oh, wait, that's his fault.
Yeah.
Was I there? I was there, right?
You were there, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the three of us, yeah.
I recall that part of it, but not much.
And then we just,
Yeah.
and then we chose to send it to the full task. We accept jurisdiction, recommended to accept jurisdiction, then I think we forwarded to the full task force with a possible recommendation of violation. I believe that's what we did.
Right. That sounds
Yeah, that's
exactly how I remember it now. Thanks.
Okay. All right, we're ready? Okay, so petitioner, what? Yeah, I know. Mr. Williams, petitioner complainant, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Kevin Williams. I'm a 60-year resident of the city and county of San Francisco. Previously, Chief Compliance Officer for the City and County of San Francisco Human Rights Commission. I was a discrimination investigator. I work with a variety of departments, including the District Attorney's Office and the City Attorney's Office. I received some extraordinary training and met some extraordinary people. But my purpose of being here tonight is to address procedurally and on the merits why I believe both the District Attorney's Office is in violation of the Sunshine Ordinance provisions, both 6721, 67.25. And I believe that under the totality of facts and evidence that are presented are in willful violation of the ordinance under 67.34. And part of this addresses one of the issues. I'm glad that Mr. Kohler, he's a likable guy, but he works for the city attorney's office. And the letter that was introduced to the Education and Outreach and Training Committee kind of puts him at cross purposes with the task force and the issues that were raised in the letter and rejected by the committee on October 16th. I would point out that the district attorney's office or the city attorney's office reintroduced this essentially the same letter on December 21st of, in essence, the same thing, reiterating what the committee had rejected. And I will go into the specifics of why I have these objections. First, let me remind the esteemed members that this task force's vital role at assisting the city with implementation of its open government business, such as the impanelment of this task force, has been established by statute pursuant to the will of the voters to ensure the benefits of open government, serve the best interests of all the people of this city. I would remind the panel that you serve as a quasi-judicial function of a tribunal board with exclusive powers resembling in many respects those of a court of law, and which is obligated to objectively determine the facts and draw conclusions from them so as to provide the basis of an official action. Secondly, to that end, I'm requesting that Mr. Gascon's full and accurate calendar be disclosed pursuant to Section 6729-5 but referral of this matter to the San Francisco Ethics Commission, preceded by an independent opinion from outside counsel, whether complicit resistance and delay by our uppermost chief law enforcement officers, including District Attorney George Gascon and City Attorney Dennis Herrera, constitutes willful misconduct with respect to the official discharge of their duties as defined under Sunshine Ordinance Section 6734. And I can go to, in rebuttal, I'll go to the specific pages, but I'll just go right to what the ordinance says relative to 6725.5A. It provides that the mayor, city attorney, treasurer, assessor recorder, district attorney, public defender, sheriff, every member of the board of supervisors, and every department head shall keep or cause to be kept a daily calendar wherein is recorded the time and place of each meeting or event attended by that official, either in person or by teleconference. Such calendar shall be public and shall be made available to any requestor 3 business days subsequent to the calendar date entry. The district attorney's office has taken the position, based on advice and representation from the city attorney's office, that to give me the calendar would represent a threat to the wife of the district attorney and the district attorney in general if it were disclosed in accordance with the requirements set forth in the ordinance. That is why we're here right now. I believe that's my time. If any questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any persons or witnesses to provide any facts or evidence on behalf of the petitioner or the complainant? Seeing none, respondent, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Nikesh Patel. I'm from the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, and I have been communicating with Mr. Williams since the inauguration of this request. I believe it was on 8/15, but we'll walk through the timeline in a second. I'm going to go a little bit out of order just to address the last statement that Mr. Williams made about our office not turning over the DA's Prop G calendars because of the risk it poses to the DA and or his wife. I believe that that's a little bit of it's a misrepresentation of what our position is because, and I'll walk you through this in a moment, but we did turn over our Prop G calendars for the DA from 2016 onwards to, I believe, 8/16/2018. There was a gap between 8/16/2018 to 8/27/2018 because during that time the DA was out of the country. He wasn't in the office, so there were no entries for that period. Now, the part of the request that we have not responded to is with respect to future calendar entries. And as far as my understanding goes, and I would love to hear your opinion on this as well, but with respect to 67.29-5, my understanding is that it is of entries as they have been entered into the calendar, which the enterer, in this case the DA, has 3 days after the event occurs to submit them into the calendar and then make that available upon request. So as far as we understand, and if there's any disagreement with that, please just jump right in. But what we did is we provided calendar entries as to the date of the request and nothing forward-looking, because it's our understanding that the Prop G calendar is a backward-looking calendar. Now, there are other, there's a more general allegation here that we haven't complied with 67. Give me 1 second. That there's a violation of 67.25. I just want to outline the timeline very quickly. The request came in on 8/14/2018. It was an immediate disclosure request. We responded on 8/15/2018, indicating that we were going to invoke an extension. The reason we invoked the extension is because of the voluminous nature of the request. There were 6 parts. They contained requests for different types of information over extended periods of time, anywhere between 2 years to 4 years. So we took the time to compile as many of the records we could, especially because there were some components of the request that were overlapping, but many were very different. So the next communication we had with Mr. Williams was on 8/27. It's because 8/25 was a Saturday, so we responded on the Monday. And on that day, we provided a total of 1,140 records. They were responsive to parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Mr. Williams' request. There were no records responsive to Section 5, so we indicated as much. We also indicated that we were going to continue our search for records responsive to 1 and 3, and that we would be in communication as those records became available to us, or as we were able to locate them and review them. And then we also indicated that we were going to continue consulting with the agency regarding item number 6, just to see what our obligations were to create a record that might be responsive. Then we received a communication from Mr. Williams on 9/17, in which he indicated that we were not in compliance, that we hadn't turned over everything that we could as far as the calendars went. We responded on 9/18 and indicated that, well, we responded on 9/18, and because there were two parts of this request that we saw developing at this time, there was the ongoing nature of the first request that we wanted to respond to, and then there was the clarification in the 9/17 email. So we bifurcated it and addressed both, providing the complete set of records for the initial response on 9/18 and indicating that we'd be in communication within several days about the second part of his request, which was about the calendars. At that time, we interpreted his request for future calendar entries, and we didn't understand what our obligation was, so we consulted the city attorney's office. Then 2 days later on 9/20, we responded to Mr. Williams and indicated that we were not going to be turning over future requests or future calendar entries for basically the reason that Mr. Williams had just indicated at the very end, which was out of fear and concern for the DA's safety. Now, I know I'm running short on time. I'll take any questions, but that fear that we have is grounded in very real circumstances. The DA has had multiple death threats to his life. His wife's car has been messed with, and he has a active restraining order against a member of our community right now. I have copies of all these materials. So the fear is not one that's theoretical. It is one that we're concerned with. And I just want to emphasize to Mr. Williams that the response is not personal at all. It is not a reflection of you. It's more of just a precedent that we're worried about creating by turning over these records in the event that they are in someone else's hands who may have other more nefarious purposes. So again, Mr. Williams, the response was not personalized, and I hope you don't take it that way. And our concern is more of just a precedent it creates. But the last time I was here, you guys gave us some wonderful suggestions. We have taken those to heart, one being that when an IDR comes in, you respond that the very next day, and then you invoke the extension, which is limited to 10 days. We did that here. The last time I was here, which was the last time there was a complaint against the office, was in 2016. So we've tried very hard as well to take the advice that we've given under consideration and to be as responsive and in constant communication to try and understand the developing nature of requests as they come in over time. So happy to take questions, and thanks for the time.
Thank you. Are there any persons or witnesses who provide any facts or evidence on behalf of the respondent? Seeing none. Members? Member Hensey first.
Responded questions.
Please state your name again.
Yeah.
Sure. My name is Nikesh Patel.
All right, Mr. Patel. Because of this fear that you have for the DA's safety, am I correct in understanding from your testimony that you won't be turning over these records to any member of the public, should they happen to request them in the future?
So I just want to be really clear about the records we're talking. I will answer the question directly, but there's the Prop G calendars, which we are happy to turn over to any requester. But our understanding of those records of the Prop G calendar is that is a backward-looking calendar, that you are allowed to, you enter the date, the event that occurs, and you have 3 days to do that. So if someone places a request for that calendar, for an up-to-date calendar, it would be as of 3 days ago. That's our understanding. And that is a record we made available to Mr. Williams through 2016 through 2018. And then we also made the month of September available just to make sure we were current as of our last communication with him. The records that we are not making available to any member of the public, not just Mr. Williams, are records of calendars with future dates. So these are dates that are not certain. They are for scheduling purposes, but they contain information about where the DA will be at a future time, who his security detail will be, and any of the logistics that go around those events. So two separate calendars, but we are not turning over the future-facing calendar to anybody, not just Mr. Williams. And that's on the advice of the city attorney's office as well, which is the letter that was, and I apologize for this, untimely delivered on the 16th, but resubmitted. It's the same exact letter well in advance on December 20th, so you would have an opportunity to review it this time around.
Member Kanata?
Fine.
Member Josh Wolf?
Now, as far as this future-facing calendar, why not turn it over with everything scratched out, sensitized to, why not turn over the future calendar but have location, security detail omitted from the calendar?
Right. And
Let me just clarify his question. Are you claiming exemption of these calendars?
Well,
from being released or disclosed as an addition to his question?
So yes, and the basis that we're claiming exemption is on 6255. Now I understand that 6255 is not normally applicable under the Sunshine Ordinance unless the DA is acting as a state actor, and that's according to Rivero. And I have a copy of the case law if you'd like to see it, but based on 6255 and case law that interprets 6255, and the cases Times Mirror v. Superior Court, where a similar request was made for I believe it was the governor's personal schedule and scheduled events. The finding and the holding in that case was that those records were protected from disclosure under 6255, in part because of security concerns for the governor.
But that wasn't the question that Mr. Wolf had.
Right, and I'll get to that. I sidetracked myself a little bit, so can you ask the question again? I'll address it squarely.
Yeah, I mean, why not turn over the calendar and say, oh, well, because this meeting is at a private location, we're going to scratch that out, but a meeting at City Hall, like, he comes to City Hall. I don't know whether that's something that is a security precaution, the fact that he's having these meetings. So it seems like there's a lot of data on that calendar that doesn't rise to a security concern, so why not release the stuff that's publicly disclosable and,
redaction.
Right, and I think part of the challenge there, I'll give you a real example that happened. There was a panel event that the DA had promoted well in advance of it occurring. I believe the event was on June 13th, 2018, and we started disseminating information about that event 2 weeks in advance because we wanted members of the public to attend. That was something that we proactively did. When that event came, the event basically had to be forced canceled because there were individuals there that were vehemently opposed to the panel, the DA in particular. It was canceled. Everyone was basically forced to leave. Now, the reason I bring that example up is because it's hard to know in advance and sort of guess into the future which events are going to be perfectly fine and which events might expose the DA to some sort of problematic situation. That's one we didn't anticipate. We actually wanted more people to attend, and then it got rowdy enough where it was a little bit concerning. That taken in addition to the fact that there is an active restraining order that the DA has against a member of the community, that his wife's car has been toyed with where the brakes weren't working, that he has gotten multiple death threats. It's one of those things where if we could see into the future and sort of guess with any sort of confidence which situations might be more safe and not, we would do that. And we're still open to that, but I don't think we know where to draw that line right now. And so it seems super discretionary, which we're more than happy to get some guidance on, but that's kind of why we drew the line with we're not going to disclose any of this right now.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? I guess my question is, so in the case, as far as 6255 is concerned, okay, I mean, that would mean, why then, did you provide any you provided other calendars,
That's right.
So the question then becomes, why not do exactly what Member Josh Wolf had said? If you have future calendars that are available, provide them, but redact them for the terms that you're asking. The question is whether generally, I don't know whether this is you're talking about, is this Police Code 6255?
This is California Government Code.
Government Code.
6255.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay, so, because under the Police Code, if items are under investigation, they can be withheld, right?
Under 6254, right?
Right. So now you're basically withholding public information, and the question then becomes, under what statute does that necessarily give you the right to do that versus providing the piece of paper that's just black?
Well, I think, so just to answer the first part of the question, why not redact? Again, it's because we don't necessarily know what to redact, given that in this situation, the DA has had some threats, and we don't know where those threats are going to be more likely than not. So we haven't sat down and discussed where are we going to redact, where are we not, because we don't really have guidance on that right now. So that's part of it. But I think the other very practical consideration is that the DA's schedule is constantly changing. It's not set in stone. And so the future calendar is more of a scheduling tool. And so it's one that's very incomplete, one that's subject to change, and that at any one point in time may not look the same the next day or the day after. So there's a practical component. There's the very real concern for his safety. And as far as the statute that you're asking for, it is 6255, because the DA is acting, in order for the DA to investigate and enforce criminal statutes, he has to be able to actually do that. And if there is a security concern, we believe that ultimately there's a balancing component to 6255. It's one where the public is not served well if he's incapable of doing his job, whereas there are calendars, Prop G calendars, that we are more than happy to keep turning over. If Mr. Williams wants us to turn over the Prop G calendar at the end of every month, we're happy to do that. It's not trying to hide the ball. It's more of, there's these security concerns, there's these calendars that we've already provided that we're more than happy to keep updating, which we did during our last disclosure, and a very real practical issue of we're not sure what to redact, because there have been situations where you wouldn't think he's at risk where something has come up.
So let me ask you this. So if we read the letter of the law,
right,
6255 is one sentence, basically. The agency shall justify withholding any record by demonstrating that the record in question is exempt under express provisions of this chapter, or that on the facts of the particular case, the public interest served by not disclosing the record clearly outweighs the public interest served by disclosure of the request. That's focusing on the public's interest. It's not focusing on the DA.
Well, what we're saying is that for the DA to be able to do his job effectively, to be safe in the capacity as a DA, that does serve the public interest.
But that could apply to any public official that could be targeted. That would then fly in the face of what the law was meant to provide.
Well, what I think there's a little bit of a difference here, because while I'm not disputing that this applies to any elected official, I think the reason that Times Mirror v. Superior Court came out the way it did is because there is a security concern with elected officials being able to do their job. So that's part of it. But the other issue is that we're not saying we don't want to turn over any of the calendar dates or scheduled events that the DA has. That's why the Prop G exists. The Prop G requirements exist, and that's why we turned over everything that we thought was responsive and then some. So I definitely understand what you're saying, but I just think that in this particular situation, because there is another legislative tool, the Prop G calendar, to ascertain a lot of the same information, there isn't as much of a public service that's lost by not turning over these future-facing calendars, because we're more than happy to, at the end of every month, turn over records that detail what happened during that month.
Mm-hmm. I get it. DC Acola.
Yeah, through the chair, I know there's a lot of attention on CPRA 6255 right now, but you might also want to take it back to what the actual request was made under. It was an IDR under 67.25A, but then the calendar was sought in that IDR under 67.29-5.
Right.
I included that at the tail end of my memo. If you look at 67.29-5, subsection A on page 213 of the packet, a plain letter reading of that refers to it as a past tense calendar.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That was going to be my next point. Thank you. Okay, members, any other questions? Are we ready for rebuttals? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Thank you.
Basically, I'm sorry, Mr. Patel, you're first for a rebuttal, actually. You have 3 minutes for a rebuttal.
Well, I will keep this quick, but I think the last. Sure. Just let me know when I'm good to go. All right. I'll keep this quick. I think the last point that was made by the Deputy City Attorney is the one that I just want to leave with, because the calendar requirements are past looking. The presumption is not a forward looking one. And so we interpreted our obligations to turn over the calendar under 67.29-5. As for any of the general complaints that we were untimely or incomplete in our disclosure, I've walked through the entire timeline. Our responses were generally within a day of the initial request, and if not, if it was over the weekend, then the following day. And over that course of the time, we did disclose almost over 1,300 records, and then took the initiative to continue to provide more records where we could, to the extent that we haven't turned over the future calendar that's really used for scheduling purposes. It's for legitimate reasons, at least as we see them. And I would just like, again, to reiterate to Mr. Williams that our basis for not turning those over are not personal in nature. They are more from a general concern, because if we turn them over in this instance, then we have to turn them over in every instance moving forward. And that's just something we want to consider very seriously before a decision is made on whether that's how we move forward or not. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, you have 3 minutes.
There's a term called invited error, and that's exactly what that is. What the district attorney's office said to me, and it was personal. In the case of Mr. Williams' request, the district attorney's personal security and safety could be placed at risk if members of the public, including persons the district attorney had previously charged with or even convicted of criminal offenses, could obtain records revealing the times and locations of meetings or events the district attorney would attend before those meetings or events occurred. That was directed to me, and I wonder, would it have gone to Keith Block or Mark Benoff of Salesforce, or would it have gone to Mr. Martin or Mr. Highland? To me, it's from the perspective of a black man. It's making a public information request for immediate disclosure while black. And the rest of that is subterfuge. The case that he's citing that they rely upon has nothing to do with the more stringent requirements of 67.21. And the involvement of the city attorney's office in giving advice to an employee flies in the face of what Judge Kopp and Peter Keene, who was previously on the Ethics Commission, complained about. Why we need an independent counsel on these issues, because what is happening and what's being overlooked is they're saying I cannot have the calendar of the activities in the future only after the meeting has occurred. What about my right to attend the meeting? What about my notice to the meeting? About critical issues, I deal with interfaith groups, coalitions of interested people, mothers and families affected by police shooting or police-related shootings of black and brown men. They want to know, and I want to know, as a father of a young black male, 34 years old, what my public official and what my district attorney's office is doing. Why can't I attend the same meeting that others attend? To me, from the perspective of a former discrimination investigator, it sounds like it's discriminatory. They didn't show up at the last meeting. They show up here with this legal subterfuge. The ordinance, as clear as your nose on your face, what it says the calendar becomes public after 3 days. And that is what I asked when I requested the information between 2016 and 2018. Nothing more. It was no investigations of any past cases, nothing to impede any present or past investigations. So the information that I requested was simply consistent with what 6729-5 requested. I take offense to that because they send a low-level person when it ought to have been someone else here from the district attorney's office experienced in sunshine ordinance requirements. This is what they have continued to do to evade and avoid compliance, full compliance with this. That is the reason why they showed up twice and did not submit their, whatever the opposition would be that they're speaking of on time. Didn't show up at all the last time. Showed up here, submitted the same letter. It said you had to submit your information within 15 days. They did it 16 days. They were untimely. It said December 20th. They submitted theirs December 21st.
Thank you.
The same information that he's mentioning here now.
Thank you. Okay, members.
I just want to make sure, if I may,
Sure.
just to clarify, I think
Member Kate.
looking at the request that Mr. Williams submitted, he did specifically ask about future and not just Prop G calendars when he asks for all scheduled personal appearances, et cetera, at dates, times, and locations to be held. Later, there was a focus about 69, the Prop G provisions.
6729-5.
But I don't think that in any way limits the requests that are at issue and that don't limit the scope of his original request just because he later referenced Prop G calendar.
So I just want to be clear, are you stating that because he asked for future, that it goes beyond 6729-5?
I mean, his request is asking for information calendar for the rest of 2018, as I'm reading it.
Right.
He's got future forward-looking language in item 2 of his request, and
so the argument is that that we're being advised on is that 6729.5 excludes future.
But it's the question of whether you look at the Prop G calendar as a ceiling versus a floor.
Okay. Well, that's the debate here, right?
And
okay.
I mean, I would think, one question that we have to grapple with is whether the existence of a forward-looking calendar that's retained by the Office of the District Attorney is itself a public record, informing the public of who he's intending to meet with, and if there's a later change in that record, who he decided not to meet with after scheduling an event. And so, I think those records were requested.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so I'm not taking a position. I just want to play a little devil's advocate to begin with. Our legal counsel had specified that we should read 6729-5 to the letter, and if you read just the very first sentence under A, the listing of all these officials shall keep or cause to be kept a daily calendar wherein is recorded the time and place of each meeting or event attended, past tense, by that official, either in person or by teleconference or other means, with the exclusion of purely personal or social events at which no city business is discussed and that do not take place at city offices or at the offices of residents of people who do substantial business, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So that's the way it starts. Okay? So I'll just throw that out there.
And the last sentence is clear also. where it says 3 days subsequent to the calendar event. But my question now in this discussion is 6729.5 the only reference, the only section mentioning calendars? Or are future dated calendars public records outside of 6729-5?
I don't know.
Right, yeah.
I mean, public information shall mean the content of public records. I think it's a public record. I mean, it's the question of whether or not there are calendars created because of the requirement of Prop G, or whether a calendar is created and forecasts those are two different animals.
Member Josh Wolf.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the Prop G calendar is its own thing, and any additional records, the question is whether or not a calendar that hasn't happened yet, whether it's somehow like considered draft material or something like that. But even then, it's still a public document that needs to be invoked for why this material can't be turned over. So I think that the 6255 attempt to not turn anything over rubs me the wrong way, but I would find myself in a different position if they had turned over the document with every line blacked out.
So you're talking about the withholding the whole document versus
redacting,
providing redacted documents. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we take up this issue several times because of the police investigative clause provisions that allow for a complete withholding of documents, like not releasable, versus public documents. The document is still a public document. What information may be restricted from view is to be redacted, but the document, and we've seen, I mean, you look at news shows, when they do FOIA requests, and it's just, the whole page is just redacted from page to page to page to page, that whole thing. It's still a public document. They still got the physical document, and it may have a page number, it may have a date, it may tell you what, what binder it's from, that kind of thing, despite all the redactions. So you're contending that despite 29-5, you're contending that this is a public document and that 6729-5 does not apply to it?
It applies in some sense, in that it requires 69 Prop G. I'm just going to keep saying. Requires the compilation of a calendar. So these calendars are the calendars that were produced were kept in accordance with that provision. The calendars that are being created in accordance with that provision. But that doesn't mean, I read that provision as saying you've got to create a calendar, and here are some of the procedures, that apply to small meetings, meetings that are personal in nature, not here's the entire universe of disclosable calendar documents. And, when we also, just to add, there's a lot of discussion of the Times Mirror case and the 6255. Those are balancing tests. And the Sunshine Ordinance says you don't get to do that. The Sunshine Ordinance says you can't also base a withholding on a deliberative process, which actually hasn't been raised. But the ordinance says you're not supposed to, it may be harsh, and I'm not suggesting that there shouldn't be concerns about, would it be inappropriate to redact? I saw one of the documents that was released talked about a coffee at a coffee shop on the 7th Street. If that calendar entry was produced and blacked out due to safety concerns, would the law allow that redaction because of the weighing factors? That's a trickier question. Withholding it completely based on understanding that where do you draw the line, but that raises a balancing question. And the ordinance says neither the city nor any office employer or agent thereof can withhold documents based on a finding or showing that the public interest favors withholding it. And that's maybe a harsh pill, but that's what it says. and kind of goes to the point of there are things on those prospective calendars that don't implicate investigative process under Rivera or Rivero, or that implicate security concerns, and if to the extent that they do, they can be redacted.
So the respondent invoked some case law, and we frequently have to defer to the case law as it applies to the particular situation at hand. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I do. I think the interpretation of the cases in the statutes, I think, can be made and have been made in good faith. I think this kind of goes to an issue of, willful violation kind of concerns. I disagree with the reading of those cases in the statutes and their applicability here, because Times Mirror is based on 6255 and the balancing test that the ordinance precludes us or the city from engaging in. The other case involved investigative file. That's not what we have here. I concede that there could be calendar entries that in some, if the DA it says on the calendar entry that the DA is meeting with people on a specific case, then maybe that's...
But that would be redactable at that point, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm kind of, that case and that issue of the state actor provision, which is kind of the argument for going around the restriction against the balancing test, is saying, look, this is a state actor doing state business investigating crimes. And that's the Rivero case is true for that whenever the DA's office is investigating crimes, I don't think the city ordinance can control that. I think that's pretty clear.
That goes to the police code at that point, because it's investigatory.
Right, but I think, Rivero has to do with investigative files that were closed, and the petitioner wanted those files. And the court said, notwithstanding the San Francisco Sunshine Ordinance, that says that file should be open, you can't get it because the DA's office is bigger than the city and county of San Francisco. And in that situation of the investigative files, the San Francisco Ordinance loses out to that state investigative function.
But does this document kind of rise to that level?
There could be entries.
They could be redacted.
They could be redacted.
Got it.
Is my view.
What about? Okay. Fair enough. Anybody else? Nope. Okay. Is there a motion? I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to find a violation of 6721, if that's the right provision, both on a timeliness factor and on the non-disclosure of a public record that was not exempt from disclosure, specifically the forward-looking calendars for the rest of 2018.
Okay. Are you requesting to speak on this?
Yes, just a quick, actually a question more than anything.
Folks, are you okay with this? Yeah. Okay. Usually we don't take it during our debate to make motions.
I just wanted to make sure I was understanding the dialogue. So what I'm hearing is that had these records been produced but redacted in full, the conversation would have been different now than it is because they weren't provided at all.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, the piece of paper, the document is considered a public document, and unless you cite, it's your under Sunshine, even CPRA, it's your defense is existing law. So if there's some existing law that says that you're not required to disclose, or you are not required to disclose, or you are you have the ability to withhold, okay, then you have to cite that, and then we have to then base our decision based upon other law that might fit. We have had cases around HIPAA We've had cases, all kinds of stuff, and we've had cases around, like there was one earlier today around personnel issues that are way out of our jurisdiction, that kind of thing. So we had also police investigative cases where we were prohibited at that point. We were just basically chopped off of the knees, for sake of a better term, because the police code said those documents are not releasable. With regards to calendars, we think it's different. We could be thinking that it's different. It's still a public document. It should still be provided. There's no provisions for withholding calendars, but there may be cases where records on the calendars are not disclosable, so they could be redacted. So why not just provide the piece of paper fully redacted? If you can cite some law that says these records should be redacted or withheld in that kind of way. Otherwise the ordinance leans towards everything being a public document unless otherwise restricted, and that's where we begin. We begin with that. So we assume that all documents are public unless otherwise by the respondent shown that they are not. Is that clear? Did I articulate that right?
I think if the spirit is to release information on records that is pertinent to the public, then the conclusion that we're sort of reaching right now, which is the record starts off as being public, and if there's information on it, in this case calendars, and to your question earlier about why not just redact everything, the thinking from our office was if you are turning over a record that has black lines through every part of it, then it's in a lot of ways that seems like it's a bad faith gesture. Like, why not? It's a slap in the face in a lot of ways, saying, look, we're going to turn this over, but everything is blacked out. Whereas not turning it over, and I understand your interpretation of Rivero as well as Mirror Times, but that was a good faith effort to say we believe that 6255, which normally doesn't apply, and the balancing that never normally comes into play, does come into play when the DA is acting as a state actor. And we believe that in order for him to do his job, prosecute cases, investigate them, and take those sorts of actions, he is acting as a state actor. So that's why we went to the balancing test. I think it would have been very easy for us to take the calendars themselves, redact everything, and turn them over. That would seem more insulting and sort of out of the spirit of...
Yeah, but you didn't do that. You provided him with past records that were unredacted.
Right.
But, if you have current entries in calendars that currently exist in the future...
Right. And what I'm saying is the reason we didn't is because they would have been just black lines throughout the entire document.
But you still provided the public with the document, a public document. And for us, that's paramount.
Right, and I guess I take that at face value, and that's something that we will do moving forward. I just want you to also understand that the reason we didn't do that is because it seemed a little disingenuous to turn over papers that just had black lines through everything.
I appreciate that socially, but we're trying to follow the law as best as you do. And for us, in the public's interest, we see providing the document, unless otherwise the law specifies that it can be withheld, and we believe that to be true, the document should be released, redacted or otherwise. So the only cases that we tend to find that the physical document can't be handed to us is investigatory and personnel.
Okay.
There may be others, but those are the ones that mostly come to us.
Okay.
So, Member LaHood.
I was going to say, to be clear, because this has come up in other cases, you can't just give us 300 pages that are all blacked out. You know, I think there would need to be some, you know, you brought up two different issues, you know, being a state actor and then the security concerns. And I'm assuming there are also some future looking items on the calendar that don't intersect one or both of those.
Right.
And with security issues, let's say it's something at City Hall. One would assume that the security here is good enough or can be amplified to a degree that might be more difficult at a private residence. And I know there would be some degree of work involved in making those decisions, but it could be done. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, our biggest hurdle because of the type of body we are is not being able to see things in camera.
Yeah.
Okay, because we are not a court, and we would have to engage somebody who has the ability that's impartial to be able to review things in camera on our behalf.
Right.
You know, you follow me? So
I do, and that's why I think the next question I was going to ask you is, I want to avoid a situation like this from coming up, but I can see a situation or scenario where it does, which is similar request is made. We turn over a future-looking calendar that has certain information blacked out, and not all of it blacked out, but the stuff that we believe does create enough of a risk and warrants being blacked out.
Well, here, let's say it's not the DA. Let's say it's some other public official, and they do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then 3 months go by, another request comes for the calendar, and they get the calendar unredacted because now it's in the past. Okay, and they see that there were some meetings that were very important or pertinent to that person, and they weren't able to go or find out about it because they were maybe not in a loop for getting a public notice about it, or the public notice was not available to them. So there are other means to find out how, where meetings are happening. When a supervisor holds meetings out in the district, so to speak, kind of thing. They notice it in advance. But if a person maybe doesn't live in their district and it can't get on their mailing list, but they can request their calendar and it shows that they have a upcoming open house on such and such a day in the future, that's helpful for the public if they want to go and hear what a public official has to say or listen to what the public is telling that public official in that kind of way.
Right. And I think you started hinting to the scenario that I can see playing out is similar request is made. We turn over records of a future-facing calendar. There are some redactions. I can see the issue coming up again. Well, that shouldn't have been redacted. And I'm just wondering, because we want to avoid
I'm saying
that
that it could be redacted. That's fine. It should be. Maybe it should be redacted if there is a security issue and you can prove by citation, by some law that should be information should be protected.
And I think that's what I'm getting to is how would we do that in the future if there's a 1-year calendar moving forward that the person has requested?
Well, we're going to end up in possibly some pretzel logic that it will end up having to be decided by a judge at some point in the future.
Yeah, because we want to be able to turn over the records that we should be and the information on those records that we should be, but without a little bit more guidance, it's hard to know what we can actually redact on the theory of there may be a risk or on some other ground, and then not end up in this position again where there's a lot of redactions and the petitioner's saying
understand that,
too much.
You've heard Member Cates' analysis, his opinion on this. He's a lawyer. That's his position. That's his position on this body. That he feels that it's a public document, future, past, or otherwise. What you choose to show on it is something different.
And I don't think there's disagreement at this point. I think what I am trying to better understand is how to avoid a situation in the future, because as an attorney myself, looking at this, I'm thinking, how do I engage in best set practices so we're not in this position over and over and over again? And I don't have an answer for that.
Let me just cut to the chase here. If you gave somebody the calendar with the future events redacted, they got the document. If they have any concerns about it, they can't come back here.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it's going to be very hard for us to say we don't have the ability to see in camera. We can't tell you. It's been redacted. They're citing certain things. We're going to, there's another venue for that, and it's called across the street.
Okay.
Okay?
That's helpful. Thank you.
450 McAllister, okay? I mean, it's like, that's, it's either that or it has to be, maybe the Ethics Commission is a place where they can see things in camera. They have a very different discovery department. We do discovery in public. They do discovery behind closed doors. And they may have a lot more authority because they're a policy body and they can issue penalties and fines. So they basically have a little more heft than we do. All right, let me get to some of the other members. Member Josh Wolf. And I will just say, for the benefit that we've given you at this point, I'm going to give Mr. Williams also the same benefit.
Yeah, I mean, sort of continuing that logic that when a document is provided but redacted, along with the reasons for each redaction, it allows us a process to work through and verify that our public records laws are being followed properly. When the document isn't provided at all, we're in this weird black box where you say, oh, everything is problematic, and we say, well, maybe not, but we don't actually have anything to discuss, and because there isn't the in-camera review, it just becomes this sort of unending cycle. So yes, if you turn over a redacted document to, say, the complainant in this case, if in the future, he may come to us and say, well, why is this redacted? And we will have a process where we walk through, and yes, we may not be able to resolve some of these things because you can't tell us what's redacted, but at least it gives us a process to work through that then allows the complainant to choose whether to accept that or to file a lawsuit in court. Whereas right now, it's like that document could say that he's meeting with Jimmy Hoffa for all that we know, or it could say this, that, or the other thing, and there's no way to even have a conversation about it.
Okay. All right, Mr. Williams?
Yes. I appreciate your comments. All of them are well taken, in particular focusing on what the legal issues. I looked at them and didn't find that the fact pattern fit with this one. And the reason I mentioned disclosure is so important is that in real time and in real places, it can mean the difference between social order and chaos. As you will recall, members, I'm going off the point to make a point. I was here about the Opera House. I met there with Javier Becerra, Attorney General, discussing the issues of black and brown shootings. It happened to be an occasion where I raised a problem, an issue with the Arts Commission of having non-published, what should have been a town hall meeting in a city-owned building, private. And these private events began to inculcate into other areas, motorcycle gangs, and there was a shooting a couple of months ago of a young man 20 times in the back. So secrecy has consequences. And I would also mention that in this ordinance, I'm talking about the mayor is also not above having to turn over her calendar. I don't know to what extent it would be redacted. Boards of supervisors, and these are policymakers. These are law takers. They take the law and enforce it. So the deliberative process involves actual decision making, and the effort, the court has said they don't need to be obstructed in the deliberation of issues that pertain to the making of laws. But they enforce the law. That is a distinction between the DA and he equates himself to the governor. So that isn't the same, that's apples and oranges, because the district attorney is not the governor. And that's the point that I was trying to make. And I understand this gentleman has been very nice. I've spoken to him a couple of times, but that doesn't get me to the record. And the record, according to the ordinance, is abundantly clear. This task force has jurisdiction. The committee of this task force found it had jurisdiction. And those calendars, whether we argue whether they ought to be redacted or not, I think it's common sense. I think it's what has been mentioned is just plain, simple, common sense. But to give nothing and to say we're not going to tell you where the meetings are, so that members of us with a deep vested interest who watch the people who have been affected by the violence that exists in these neighborhoods have to have access to those who are involved, such as the district attorney's office. And I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. Okay, members. What's your pleasure?
Well, there was a motion put out, wasn't there?
Right. So can you please say that into the microphone so everybody can hear it?
Kate moved to find a violation of 6721 due to timeliness and non-disclosure of a public record. Who wanted a second?
Okay. There needs to be a second.
I'll second.
So moved by member Kate, second by member LaHood. Is there any debate, discussion on the motion?
Yeah,
Member Canada.
I don't see the timeliness issue. I see the withholding because they didn't provide a public record.
Explain.
Going through, it seems like there was an IDR made. They responded the next day saying, we're going to take some time doing this, and 10 business days later, there was a response, and there was ongoing data even provided after that.
Oh, so your incremental rolling basis kind of thing? Okay. All right, sir.
Amend the motion to just move to find a violation for an inadequate disclosure of a public record.
So you want to take out the time? You want to take out the timeliness?
Correct.
All right.
Is the second agree?
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other debate on the? Okay. Public comment, not the parties. Seeing no public comment, please call the roll.
Member Kate?
Aye.
Member Kate, aye. Member LaHood?
Aye.
Member LaHood, aye. Member Highland?
Aye.
Member Highland, aye. Member Hinsey?
Aye.
Member Hinsey, aye. Member Kanata?
Aye.
Member Kanata, aye. Member Tesfaye absent. Member J. Wolf?
Aye.
Member Wolf, aye. Member Martin?
Aye.
Member Martin, aye. Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Wolf, aye. The motion passes.
Okay. Thank you. It's a very instructive, very interesting case. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, please call the next item. Thank you.
Item number 10, file number 18082, proposed amendments to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force bylaws. And
Okay.
it was attached in the packet.
So let's see where we can find here. So we have page 273, I think is the first one. And if any of these amendments, you guys can decide, but we should be making separate motions on items that are very independent of each other. Like if they're in separate sections, they should be separate. Okay. So that's on page 273, section 10, number 7, subparagraph 7. It is a amendment to strike original language, vote by the task force. Okay, so the title is "The task force shall hold hearings on the merits of complaints pursuant to the following procedure." And then this is the complaint process, and the last part is vote by the task force. The amendment would replace that language to be the task force may vote to take one of the following actions: A, make a motion to find a violation; B, make a motion to find no violation; C, make a motion to take no further action, and close the file. All right, we need to add a word in there before C, and it should be the word or.
The word or after
Or.
violation?
Yeah, it should be. It actually should. I don't know where. I don't know that a semicolon.
Actually, do we need that? Because we say may vote to take one of the following.
So why don't, instead of putting A, B, and C in line. Why don't we keep with the kind of the constitutional format by putting them as sub listings?
Yeah, I
okay,
can do
if we
that,
could do
yeah.
that instead, I think that'll make it a little bit clearer. Okay, is there a motion?
I move to accept the language.
So moved by Member Kanata, second by Member Hinsey. Is there any discussion, debate on this? Everybody okay with it? Does it cover all our bases that we've been dealing with on this issue? Okay. Is there any public comment on this amendment to the bylaws? Okay, seeing none.
Take the roll.
Hold on a second.
I think it's just procedural. We've already taken a roll.
I just want to make sure that we're following the correct amendment procedure because it states that it must be held at least, this vote must be held at least 14 calendar days after the initial meeting at which the proposed amendments were presented.
They were presented at the last meeting, and it was noticed as required by the bylaws.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, call the roll.
Member Kanata?
Aye.
Member Kanata, aye. Member Hinsey?
Aye.
Member Hinsey, aye. Member Highland?
All right.
Member Highland, aye. Member Kate? Aye. Member Kate, aye. Member LaHood?
Aye.
Member LaHood, aye. Member Tesfaye, absent. Member Josh Wolf?
Aye.
Member Wolf, aye. Member Martin?
Aye.
Member Martin, aye. Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Wolf, aye. The motion passes.
Okay, please call the next item.
Item number 11, reports from Sunshine Ordinance Task Force committees.
Complaints Committee. Is there any reports?
I chaired the last complaint committee meeting. It was just the one item
Member Hinsey.
that we had. We met, and there was
Anything to report?
not really.
Okay, great. Compliance and amendments?
Yeah,
Member
just one
Kanata?
thing, because of this past case about not providing a public record as opposed to providing it redacted. Compliance and amendments was sent a case where we asked them to provide a redacted spreadsheet, and they refused. So it's coming back. We'll have this issue again.
Okay, very good. Thank you. EOT?
We haven't met for a while. We'll be meeting on January 15th.
Okay. Rules Committee?
We met, I believe, in October. I think we're in the process of collecting items for a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. And the Information Technology Ad Hoc Committee has not met in some time.
Do you guys want to set up a meeting to do that or get committee members?
I do recall at the last rules committee meeting that we assigned a couple items to that committee. So they were for their next meeting. They do have a couple items.
Okay. Anything you want to highlight? You recall?
One was about our intake form online, looking at the intake form, and then the other one was about this whole issue of I believe a central database.
Okay. Right. So the that was the IT committee was going to, that was its particular focus.
Yeah.
So, the report on that is usually I ask that, come the administrator's report and how that's going, whether the clerk has made a final decision or not. So I'll wait till the administrator's report to ask that question. And that's why the IT committee has not met, because we had heard that was possibly coming for us. Okay. Anything else for committees? Does any other members want committees to take a look at something? To do something. If you're not on a committee, do you want to be on a committee? Do you want to switch committees?
Are we going to do committee reassignments at some point?
Yes, we will. But we'll need, well, when we do the orientation,
Okay.
we can have that discussion there and figure it out. People can think about what they want to do. The only thing I would ask for Rules Committee is something that we've also struggled with is excused absences.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and I think you should take a look into that. I mean, I would limit them, I won't say how many absences, but we only meet 12 times a year. So,
Yeah.
Think about it in that kind of way. Those absences are specifically for this meeting, this of the full en banc here.
Yeah. Okay.
Not necessarily for committees. So, but have at it.
We can put that on there.
Okay, great. Okay, there's no action on it. Any public comment on the task force committees? Seeing no public comment, let's move to the next item.
Item number 12, Sunshine Ordinance Task Force Chair's Report.
So, first, I just want to open it by saying Happy New Year, everybody, and happy holidays, and welcome back. I hope everything was, uneventful, but eventful and joyous for you all. I do want to just publicly state an apology because there are a number of outstanding items of research that we have outstanding, very old cases that are outstanding based upon very arcane issues that I have not been monitoring that well. And this month I will hope to try and get those expedited by the end of the month in time for our next meeting and hopefully getting those cases agendized immediately. Prop B. Prop B, is some significant debate about Prop B in November and how the ability now for the Board of Supervisors and the mayor to chime in on amending the Sunshine Ordinance when the basic premise of the Prop B was not that. And there was the debate by the opponents was that it was somehow slipped in, that it was not pertinent to and there was no actual argument provided or reason in how it actually had any effect on the meat of the ballot measure. So the ballot measure was privacy first. It was meant to protect the public's collection of public data and public information by city contractors to limit only that information that city contractors were contracted for and nothing else, and they cannot share it. What does that have to do with Sunshine? It does have to do with the lack of transparency of creating, but that's in the public's interest. It's to protect the public from what city contractors are doing. It's kind of not quite a sunshineable kind of thing because the public's records, the records of members of the public are not public records. They're personal records to any resident. That public records are, in our case, is what's in government. Okay, your bank account is your own. That's not a public record. Your lease, or for where you rent your home, that is a private record. That's not a public record. The only time it becomes a public record is if you go to court. It enters into the government system in that way. So where does Sunshine fit in all this? What could possibly a privacy first, a policy that gets created, trigger a problem with Sunshine? And that is their argument. The proponents did not necessarily have an answer for that. So I wanted to put that on the floor for a little bit of discussion, and because we didn't necessarily have an opportunity to discuss this before the election, and whether we can't take necessarily a position, so to speak, an official position, but we can offer at least some discussion and opinion about it. And so now that it's been passed, now we have to contend with it. Does anybody have any thoughts about about it, or are there any areas where you think there might be some interaction? So I just wanted to be able to provide you with the venue to be able to talk about it, because the big thing about this is that it now has demoted the ability for amending the Sunshine Ordinance. It's demoted it from being voter approved. It is now can be amended by the Board of Supervisors and the mayor. The Sunshine Ordinance was actually developed to oversee the executive branch. The Board of Supervisors that really have no control over city operations except to pass policy and maybe hopefully get the mayor's approval to approve that, to invoke some additional rules on the executive branch. And that could have an effect on that. So if the ability of the Board of Supervisors and the mayor has the ability to adjust the Sunshine Ordinance, how does that protect the public? And the way it was written was, and I'm just posing these questions. This is not necessarily. I have some opinions myself about this, but just for the sake of presentation, this is I'm just posing questions. The way it was written is that that the intent should not impinge on the findings and the purposes of the Sunshine Ordinance. Well, who determines intent? Who does that? It could be anybody's opinion. There's no boilerplate or baseline for what intent is. So that was a main crux point for the opponents. And that should be, to me, that's a concern that we have to, when it comes time that the Board of Supervisors wants to make amendments, there's nothing in that clause that says that the Sunshine Task Force needs to be consulted with at bare minimum, or even sunshined at that point. They could just introduce it one day. And we don't even have to be notified. We would have to find out by following the Board of Supervisors calendar, which means now we might have to ask our administrator to read through every week's calendar, including the committees, to find out if something comes up. Are we getting additional money for that additional labor for our staff here? These are important questions because our staffing has been reduced and cut in the past, and hours that are allowed for our DCA has been reduced also over the years. And so we have challenges with regards to that because we're a simple appointed body. We're not a commission that has some dollars and cents attached to it by law. So I'm going to stop there. Anybody? I'm opening the floor for discussion.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
Much like you said, much like they slipped in an amendment to a proposition that already passed 20 years ago into another proposition, and therefore giving themselves the power to change that. I think we do have to just really watch what they do, and chances are any changes to it is going to come in a subcommittee hidden behind something else. So who does the detective work for that? But secondly, I was going to ask you, I know we've had some representatives from the, I forget the exact...
San Franciscans for Sunshine.
For Sunshine. They tried to get something on the ballot, didn't get it in time. I wonder what they're now thinking. Do we need another ballot to reaffirm?
Well, from what I understand, they're still working on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly being tweaked because of things like this. But that would be a significant departure from how this particular body exists right now. It would turn it into a commission with all the provisions that other commissions have or may have. Each commission is developed differently. But more or less, there are a bunch of provisions in there, and that document's been presented publicly many times. It's actually on their website if you wanted to read through what it looks like. And I would say feel free to contact them if you have any concerns or additions you'd like, or suggestions for them, that kind of thing.
I mean, I know we've talked at this body and listened to their presentations. There's certainly, after 20 years, some tweaks that I think would be good in the interests of Sunshine. But maybe it needs to get put back on the ballot and reaffirmed, given what just happened.
Sure. I mean, you have to consider to put a publicly presented ballot initiative on the ballot. Takes a lot of time to collect signatures in a short period of time. Usually you have to hire people to do that, pay people to do that, which means it demands some money, and that becomes a challenge for a kind of a policy, to get a piece of policy passed versus changing how, big problems are to be fixed in a way. It's not a very sexy issue. And for a lot of people, but you listen on the news and you listen to people who come in before us, members of the public. People are concerned about transparency. They look at what's happening in Washington and all that stuff, and what we hear and what we don't hear, and things like that. But it's not necessarily like concrete, the concept of transparency, until it hits them, and then they realize that. And being able to get people to take that seriously. It's been very hard for people to take this body seriously, in that kind of way. Also, I mean, it's not easy being in the public's position for the public's interest. It's one of the few bodies in the city that exists in this kind of way. So, any other thoughts about this? So the only thing I would say is I still have a 2018 report to the Board of Supervisors to finish. I would be open to any words or language that reflect such a thing with regards to maybe, we want to be consulted at the time, before something is introduced, when it's either like presented for any agenda, or if there's discussion among supervisors that, they should consult with us if they're thinking about creating this. And, we would be happy to do it if they wanted to in some kind of, some way that because lots of times they like to do things in, they don't have to reveal things until they bring them to the floor, kind of thing, right? So, but, at any point that they want to have a discussion with any one of us or all of us, that kind of thing, we'll kind of figure that out. But if you want to add some language with regards to how Prop B might affect us, or what we want to do to make sure that we're in the loop, or included in providing, kind of thing. It's kind of like, if you think of it as kind of a ballot initiative, there's a pro and a con, argument for the proposal is being put forward. We should have some ability to be able, and some ample time to be able to review, not just 3 days, because the question then becomes, somebody could say, well, this is an emergency, and they could waive the rules to move it straight to the board and not have it go through committee. Something like that could happen for some reason. We have maybe you have concerns about the intent. What does that word intent mean? Okay, I think it's in quotes in the ballot language. I may be wrong, but it's there. And I think that might be of some interest to you to think about. So, okay. Moving on. So the next item is our orientation, like our or retreat. That's going to be at the ending of January 15th.
15th, and we reserved room 278.
Okay, and that's in place of EOT or after EOT?
After.
Okay, after EOT. We're in room 278?
We will need to think about that a little bit because I was just thinking about it while standing here. They don't have a very good audio recording system down there. It would be down to a handheld audio recorder.
Oh, I thought they had all that equipment in the. It's not very good.
No.
Okay.
So,
is there some other? I mean, if we wanted to serve refreshments, we can't do it in here.
No.
So, is there some other room? I mean, I've had meetings in other rooms.
We can meet in 278, but I just, we'll be using handheld audio recorders, and it's more of a. It's not going to be a formal meeting with.
Right.
It's just going to be a lot of people talking over each other, and so forth.
It's informal.
We can meet down there, but I just warned that we'll be using handhelds.
Okay.
Would we even need audio recorders?
Yeah, it's a public meeting because we're all there because it's quorum.
We're all there, yeah.
And we'll be discussing items that are within our jurisdiction, so it has to be a public meeting. So is there anything specific? So in preparation for this, is there anything specific that people would like to have it either be informed about, have a training on, be explained? Is there anything specific? I mean, some of the things I wanted to go through is I always like to go through the bylaws and some of our main policies so we all hear them together and we can all discuss them together. I think it's really important. I've had not very good experiences when it's done in 2 meetings with different people in the room, and then you end up with people having different interpretations come the main meeting. So I want to make sure that if there is anything specific, please, you don't have to say it right now. You can just email me or Cheryl or Victor, and we'll make sure if we need a facilitator. That was the other thing. Do we want a facilitator? There are a number of people in the city's family that does facilitations for departments for such kind of meetings. Would you like to have a facilitated orientation? And that just really kind of means making sure we stay on track, on an agenda, on time, so you're not spending all day. We're not going, down some rabbit's hole, and somebody's kind of impartial to kind of keep the meeting flowing in that kind of way. Interest? No interest? You want me to make that decision? Okay. All right.
How long are we projecting here?
How long did you
I
research?
think we're planning on starting at approximately 5 o'clock.
Right. So I would say if we can do it till 7, 2 hours, I think that will give us enough time. And just, in some areas, prepare to be bored. But hopefully you're really interested in a lot of this stuff. But, really just to get it done once and get it under your belt, I think is really important. I don't think we need to, I think it's important that I would love to go through the entire Sunshine Ordinance with everybody. I think at times people are not fully aware of certain parts. But instead, I would say if there are specific passages that you feel are not quite clear, not written well, so we have to end up with interpretation all the time, that kind of thing. We could also, there are past orders of determination that maybe you've read through that seem conflicting with each other based upon interpretation of the ordinance, that would be good conversation, I think, and would help. Because it could be something that's recurring. We've had we had an interesting issue with the last group of folks where under 6721, there is kind of, if you can start at the top and you work your way down, it's kind of a process of how you get your information. You can read it kind of seriatim in a way, in kind of serialized. Okay, and some members feel that as long as the public gets any information, that process, it's not necessary. So under the California Public Records Act, it speaks of an agency providing, it doesn't speak about people providing information. It speaks of an agency, a department, that kind of thing, an organization providing information versus the Sunshine Ordinance, which enhances that by taking it down to the personal level, the actual person being the custodian. So when you have 6721 and that isn't being adhered to, and then somebody says, well, they've complied with the CPRA, the question is we're, as a city, we're provided the pleasure and the allowance of or privilege to create our own more enhanced law. It's one of the few kind of laws that are out there. So, I think it's important for the task force to take a position on that for the future legacy. And if they want to, the future folks want to have a debate about it because of whatever they feel at the time, the way the public feels at the time, that's great. That's fine. But I think for our purposes, in our 2-year term, I think it's important that we, are at least all on the same page with certain understanding of the Sunshine Ordinance. And if we're in debate about something and we can agree to disagree, it's fine too. We don't have to collude together. We have our own opinions. So I just wanted to put that out there and make that part of, having this kind of informal discussion, because we don't have those opportunities too often. And you can do it in committee. You could do it at a rules committee. You could do it at compliance and amendments and say, okay, we're going to take 30 minutes to discuss this item and do it that way too. But I think as a group, when we're talking about more arching issues, that we take that opportunity to do that in that kind of way. So bring your ideas, bring your opinions. Don't be afraid to speak up and make some hash. It's appreciated by all. So, and we extend the invitation to DCA COLA and DCA Price Wolf if they want to attend, and any of course, our staff will be there. And I think it'll be, since we don't have ex officio seats from the mayor's office or from the clerk's office yet, I think it would be also of some interest, to hear their opinions, from our staff and from DCA COLA and what they, feel, on what we do. So, okay, that's all I got. Staff report. Next item, staff report.
Staff report, item number 13, staff report, complaints and communications. So I did this before I left for vacation. So item number 1, tentative hearing schedule for the remainder of 2018. First meeting we have actually is EOTC, which is on the 15th, and then on that same day at about 5 o'clock, we have retreat and orientation. January 22nd, complaint committee. February 6th, SOTF at 4 p.m. 19th, compliance and amendments. February 26th, complaint committee. March 7th, Sunshine Task Force.
I believe we need to get membership for the EOTC meeting, as I don't believe we have confirmation of attendance and membership.
Right now, it's just you. So.
Oh, we don't have any other members, or members won't be able to show up?
No, that's what we're asking. Who wants to be
I
part
believe at this time, Chair Josh Wolf
is the only member of EOT?
Yes.
Yes.
Who's not on a committee?
I'm not on a committee yet, but that's going to be a difficult time for me to do on a routine.
It's every other month.
Well, the schedule for the committees haven't been determined yet. It's just a one-time commitment for this meeting until we can.
What time is it at?
It's a 3:30 meeting
30.
for EOTC.
Okay, I'll just come early, I guess.
Oh, for the next one? Okay.
You'll be here? Okay.
Want to do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be here because we have to be here for the orientation.
All right,
anyway.
we can also have this as a item of discussion at the retreat to try and figure out if we need to adjust.
Yeah.
The days and the times are set because we have to share these rooms. So, but we can adjust what committees meet on what day and what time. So that's flexible.
Do we have a third volunteer, or a third member?
Yeah, Hansy and Yankee.
Okay. I didn't.
Yankee volunteer himself.
You volunteered? I mean,
Can you
did
make
you?
it that day?
Because you said it's at 3:30, but it meets every other month.
We only need commitment for this one meeting.
Just for this one
Just
meeting.
for this one
yeah.
meeting, yeah.
And it can be more in the future, but we've got the retreat for this one meeting, so that.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about that because,
We shouldn't talk about future agendas at a public meeting.
okay.
They're draft, and we shouldn't talk about it at a public meeting.
But you can talk about how big it is.
Yes.
That's probably where you're going.
Sort of.
Sort of. That you can talk about. So if you feel a 4 o'clock meeting is.
We can keep it short if you like, and start at 4 o'clock instead.
That would work for me.
4
4
o'clock?
o'clock, I can do 4 o'clock on that.
Yeah, I can do 4. I can do 4 o'clock.
We'll adjust it accordingly and check with Chair Josh Wolf.
Okay, sounds good.
I noticed a typo because I was putting it in my own calendar. The March task force meeting should be on the 6th, not the 7th, because assuming it's on the
6th.
Wednesday. Wednesday is March 6th.
Okay, thank you for telling me that. Okay, item number 2, petitions, complaints submitted, and here, are we done with item 1? I'm sorry, were we done with item 1?
Any other comments or concerns, questions? Nope. Okay,
Okay,
continue.
Item number 2, petitions, complaints submitted, and hearing files created. Since the last task force memo, we've only gotten 3 new complaints that, well, I don't want to say, that appeared to be independent of each other.
Those will most likely be scheduled for the complaint committee on the January 22nd meeting, with maybe one of them going for the 15th. Next,
Pending petitions, item number 3, pending petitions, complaints for the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force and/or committee.
we're holding steady on the number of pending complaints.
Are those complaints that need to be scheduled, or are those complaints, that have come in that are you guys are helping people out versus ones
Those are pending scheduling.
So they are active.
Yes, they are active complaints.
Wow. Okay.
But if you look at the next stat, more than half of them are by one person.
Right.
Exactly. That's why I
Okay.
said independent complaints.
Right. So just to let everybody know that I have suspended any complaints to be heard by the task force by this person, Ann Trudeau. There was a report that we've been notified through some communications that she's passed away.
I have an update on that.
If you hold on for 1 second. So there's some concerns about the efficacy of that, and we're trying to figure out what exactly this is all about, because there's other people that have come in under a different names that seemingly are appear to be similar to this person in the way they speak and their phrasing and their and that kind of thing. We're not quite sure what's going on here. So yes, now
I am 99% sure that I saw this person we are talking about on Saturday, December 22nd at the Boulange near Union Square.
Okay.
So
this person was a craft artist. Do you know if they were doing any of that kind of?
No, she was like getting a coffee there.
Okay.
I don't think she recognized me, but I immediately recognized her. I just wanted this as point of information because the situation had been brought to my attention, and that was counter to other information that had been presented.
Okay. I would just also say that, I'm sorry. So I would just also say that I've been contacted by a particular person, only by email, that I had recognized some similarities in the way they write their emails, and had requested a meeting with them. And we went back and forth a few times. I thought it might happen, and then all of a sudden I didn't get a response, and the next email was, why are you refusing to meet with me? And so it got a little twisted. Things started getting a little twisted and continued to. This person has now called my office, left emails stating that I've overreached my public official boundaries by making contact directly with members of the public, things like that. And this is very similar language. I could probably show you emails of almost the exact same language from Ann Trabeau. So I just want you to be forewarned that it's important. If you haven't done it already, and I probably haven't mentioned this to you guys yet, you should create a separate, independent email account for your work here. And part of that is because of the Smith versus San Jose case, which allows disclosure of your personal online accounts. And so if people are concerned about the work that you're doing here and all that information is contained in that email account, has no attachment to any other personal account, and you're not talking about what you do here in any other personal account, there's only going to be one account that's going to count. There's only going to be one email account that's going to count. So I would urge you to do that. And it also helps because if it ever gets publicized in any way and you start getting spam or people directing stuff, it's going to some account, for this purpose and not to your personal account in that kind of way. So you won't have to be concerned about that. Okay, enough on that. Anything else on that for anybody? No. Okay, next item.
Item number 4, pending petitions, complaints referred from SOTF to committee. So one of them is a Trabeau matter. The other one is Ray Hart's, which we heard a few weeks ago, and which we have possibly on the EOTC agenda.
So is that the only 2 items that are to be heard by committees in the next?
This is the main one that EOTC will be reviewing, and it's more. I see it more of as a hearing matter where the violation was already found, but there was no order to produce additional documents, as far as I know. So it appears to be more of a hearing on the subject matter.
Okay, but with regards to the previous item and there being pending
3 complaints,
are those being scheduled for?
To keep the meeting short, we probably won't put many of those on the same time.
No, but what about other committees?
I was going to put those on for the complaint committee on the 22nd.
Oh, okay. I just wasn't quite sure what number 4 meant.
Number 4 is just issues from this task force that have been referred down to committee for hearing.
I see. Okay. Got it. Okay. Any discussion, questions? Nope. Okay. Next item.
Item number 5, pending issues. There are 3 matters: Mary Miles, Ray Hart's, and Data SF report.
Right. Okay, so with 17.110, that's kind of been overridden by the clerk completing their contract with a new database system.
Okay. So we will remove that item on our next report.
Right, but is there an update from the clerk's office?
Right now we're in the testing and they're in the creation phase at this point.
So they've contracted with somebody?
We have contracted. They are creating a database for the Board of Supervisors, and when that is tested and in place, it is my understanding that the intention is to spread it out to other boards and committees of the Board of Supervisors, including LAFCO and Sunshine, Revenue Bond, anything that operates under the board. They want to get onto one system.
Okay. Is there anything that we can do in preparation? And is there a timeline?
I'm not sure on the timeline, but I'm sure there's a deadline for the contracting on the Board of Supervisors portion.
Okay.
Most likely, it's going to coincide with the board break for implementation.
Is there any work that we should be doing? Should we be creating it?
I haven't received any information, but it is. They do intend to include us in that project.
All right. Okay. And those other two items are.
Those are some of the. They touch on some of the subject matters that will be talked about during the orientation.
Right.
Some issues that are under debate.
Right. And these are some of the items that I apologized for earlier. Okay. Next item.
Item number 6, communications.
If you have read that letter, it's a communications from several supervisors of or custodians of records.
It's dated December 17th, 2018. It's page 280.
And if you have any response to it, I'm sure that the group would love to hear from you.
There's actually a custodian of records working group. When did that get formed?
Apparently. I don't know.
And 2017, according to the letter.
Yeah. Oh, fall 2017. Okay.
I did hear from one of the members today, and if you have any questions, you would like to bring them in for a hearing, I'm sure they would look forward to that.
I know Caroline Celaya pretty well. If you wanted her to come in and speak, I'm sure she'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, I know almost everybody on this list, too. Public Works. Okay. All right. I think, maybe if everybody could read this in preparation for the retreat, I think there's some things that we need to possibly talk about with regards to what will be allowed during a meeting, and as far as First Amendment rights and whatnot versus decorum. And we usually are pretty lenient about it because of transparency and First Amendment rights, but decorum is a negative derogatory language, does not have a place also. So I urge you to read through this, and if you have any thoughts you want to talk about or bring up during that meeting, let's have it.
Should we put this on the agenda for that meeting?
Yeah. Because at the same time, we're going to have to also possibly get some guidance from legal counsel as to what our abilities are, what we're allowed and not allowed to do. How far.
I assume that we'll begin discussion at orientation, then have additional meetings after that.
Yeah.
Where we can invite various members of both sides of the issue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay.
Next item.
Anything else on these communications? Nope.
No, that's the only one that we received.
This month.
But
that's the only one that we received that's unrelated to a complaint.
Got it. Okay. All right. What else?
Item number 7, request from community persons, November 21 to December 8th. We responded to approximately 178 emails and many calls, I can tell you. Office visits, not so many, requesting information regarding Sunshine Ordinance, pending complaints, or to mediate requests for records. And that list is after the letter.
Members, any?
If you don't have any idea what it is, it's fine. But what on earth, if you happen to know, what is 2018 Vigilant Data Sharing Information from Christopher Dove?
Where is that?
It's on the list of emails.
Yeah, but where?
We will retrieve that and get it to you.
All right. Yeah, I was just curious. It jumped out at me. That's all.
We don't recall all of these emails.
I
that
didn't
come in.
expect you would, so.
We will mark it and we'll get you a copy.
Great, thanks.
Christopher Dove, what page is that on?
Do you know what date we received it?
11/21.
11/21, Christopher Dove.
Second one from
top
the
of 289.
Yeah. Vigilant data share.
It just kind
Top
of
of the
jumps
last
out at
page.
you.
Maybe it meant to be, say, vigilante.
That doesn't make it any less confusing.
Yeah.
We will forward you a copy of that email.
Okay.
It's like Batman
All right.
and Superman sharing data.
Anything for the good of the cause for staff? Okay.
Yeah. So you made me paranoid. I just created a new Gmail account. Should I just reply to the main one, or should I reply to everyone and say, please use this for future
No,
correspondence?
send it to Victor and
Okay,
and
so to
to
the
The
official
SOTF,
account.
send it to the SOTF, and we will use that for all future communications. So please check it as you would any other email.
Right, and if you use Gmail or something like that, it comes with G Drive and all that, so you can put all your agendas and things like that, and have completely independent space for all that stuff. Okay, next item on the agenda.
Item number 14, announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items by members of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force.
Anything? Anybody? I thought somebody had an announcement they wanted to make.
Josh, did you have something? Did you want to create a file for the building meeting
What?
policy?
What are you? I don't even know what you're asking me about.
Going
It was
back to
about the ADA thing.
Did you want
I'm not sure what the best approach is. It just sort of was an idea that came to me that rather than possibly pushing this forward indefinitely because we can't get all the parties together, that maybe we can proceed around finding a violation and absent of a party who has difficulty being here.
It just could be as simple as a letter from us, from a committee saying it's come to our attention through our other work that there may be discrepancy here. I mean, that could be the beginnings of it.
I would maybe suggest that if a committee wants to take this up, that they, if you feel that there's enough information that's been provided through these cases, that you come up with a kind of an opinion and a recommendation. And then if there are policies that you can point to that you feel you have, some other language that might be helpful for that, I think that would be a good piece of work for a committee to do some oversight on existing city policy. And what this does is it prevents future. It helps clarify things, and it may help prevent future violations and complaints.
It's one of the most basic rights of
Whatever
attending a
committee
meeting.
I'm on all day.
Yeah, but at the same time, you present it out there publicly, and then all of a sudden the city attorney says, well, wait a minute, or the DA says, well, it has a different opinion, or the mayor's office of disability has a different opinion, and then you have community groups that may have a different opinion, and then it begins a discussion at that point.
Yeah, I mean, the EOTC has one item that's sort of going to take a fair amount of time hacking something on a similar vein for this next meeting, so I'm not prepared to add it to our agenda at this point, but we can revisit it in 2 months.
Just open a file and it can sit there until you're ready to tackle it, or another committee could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Member Kanata, Chair Kanata.
Whatever committee I'm on, I can dig
It's not
it.
really education; it's more like compliance.
No,
I mean, yeah, I felt it was more compliance, but I didn't want to be like, hey, Member Kenyatta, I think that's on you.
It could be any committee could actually take it up as an issue if they want, if it's kind of within their jurisdiction. I mean, I think it's important. It's somewhat also, for rules also,
Yeah, I was gonna say
can
rules.
do that.
Rules could take it.
Yeah, and I'm happy to join with you on that
Yeah.
too. Okay, considering our background.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other items for the good of the cause? No? Okay. Well, you guys are pretty quiet tonight. Okay. All right. Next item.
Item number 15, adjournment.
Is there a motion? Moved by Member Kanata, second by Member Kate. Any public comment on? No, there's no public comment on adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Nice.
Thank you for staying late, DCA Cola.
I got here late. Stop the recording.
Oh,
Hit stop button.
we're not counting.
Square.
Do you get to record that time?
Oh, yeah.
Hit stop.
You have to stay.
See you on the 15th.